Okay, so good evening, everybody. We will call to order. Mr. Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mayor Patterson, we have quorum.
Okay, thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I, Ryan Bowman, of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Kingston, declare my pecuniary interest in the matter of Item 6, Clause A, B, C, as an employee of the Utilities Kingston. It may be received that I have pecuniary interest in these matters and related bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I see another hand? No. Okay. Just check. Okay, so we have no delegations this evening, so we will move on to the 2017 budget introduction, and we'll invite the CAO to introduce it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council, members of staff, members of the public that are here tonight. Welcome to the 2017 draft operating and capital budgets for the City of Kingston. The report before you is comprehensive as it relates to both the city's overall budget and the 15-year models associated with that, as well as the utility budgets, including all of the different services that are managed by Utilities Kingston. I wanted to talk briefly with you as to how the budget relates to the priorities that were set by council. As you know, the 6 overarching priorities, all of which are on the screen, and this is obviously the page that's on the website where people can click on that and determine not only what the priorities but the status of those priorities. And I also wanted to indicate to you that there is a report that will be coming on December the 6th to council, which will be a midterm report, which will basically outline all of the priorities that you had and the status of where they are and what the future looks like relative to them. I can continue to inform you that we are on pace to meet at least 90 to 95% of those priorities that you have established, and we continue to work with that as a guiding document. We also respected the direction of council with respect to the parameters, and this budget reflects those particular parameters, and I'm going to talk briefly about how the transit business plan is integrated into this budget. So just as a refresher, in your report and part of your information shows the individual initiatives under each of the priority areas, and the tick marks in the highlighted column indicate what staff will be working on as part of this budget, including works that's currently in progress. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this other than to say that there is tick marks in almost every single one of those particular initiatives. With respect to the ones that show as completed in 2016, I can say to you that while a strategy like the youth employment strategy, as an example, might be complete, the implementation and the programs associated with that will be lasting in the city, not only here in this corporation, but as part of the community's effort for years to come. I'll just pause for a minute just to give you a chance to look at this. I will comment on transit in a few minutes in another slide. Okay, with respect to just a quick rundown of some of the municipal budget, total budget that's before you is about $360 million, non-tax revenues about $128 million, payments in lieu of taxes, that's from upper levels of government, $16 million, assessment growth, that's between supplemental taxes and assessment growth, about $1.3 million each. To get to a total net taxation of $213 million. Desiree will be going through that in much more detail a little later this evening. What you have is a municipal tax increase of 2.5%, which has an impact of approximately $82 on a property that's in the range of $300,000, and Desiree will talk to you about the specifics of the average assessment. It maintains all frontline services. There have been no adjustments for the 2017 services. It maintains a 1% incremental capital levy, which continues on with our reinvestment in capital program, and which has been the direction of council. It incorporates increased service levels with respect to the transit business plan. And you will remember that council were very interested in the transit business plan, but you were also very concerned about the cost. And so you sent staff back to see what we could do. I'm happy to report that we can fit the first 2 years of the plan inside your 2.5%, essentially, when we find the other $900,000 in the 2018 budget. So we never stop trying to work on continuous improvement. And we do have some challenges in the 2019 and 2020 year, but we are not telling you today that those challenges are insurmountable. Give us a chance to work through them and see what we can do. So the budget for transit and the forecasts basically is in accordance with the first 4 years of the plan, and the 5th year has been pushed out a little bit into the 2021 period, but it is doable for the 2017-2018 year. When we left the last budget, we had indicated to you that we had a $1.346 million gap to find in order to bring this year's budget, the 2017 budget, in at 2.5%. We knew we needed knew we needed 2.1 million for 2018 and 3.2 million for 2019. So if you add the implications of transit, which is about 900,000 on the 2017 forecast, then we've actually been able to find ways to close a gap of $2 million, actually $2.2 million, and Desiree will talk a little bit about how that was. So I just want to congratulate staff in all areas for, again, your effort in terms of looking strategically at these budgets and managing your services and your costs in accordance with the direction of council. How did we achieve that? Well, we achieved $600,000 in general absorption of inflation, fuel price reductions, and we'll have a slide a little later on that. Insurance savings, $150,000. Provincial grant increases, approximately $325,000. Some transfers to offset one-time costs of $750,000. Reduction in the hospital levy, which you approved a couple of months ago, of $550,000, and some additional supplementary taxes as a result of net growth of $300,000, and that's within the current year. That was offset by further revenue losses on the investment income, POA revenues, that's provincial offenses revenues, and some transit reductions in fares, in some cases as a result of providing free transit to some of the groups that council has endorsed. Some refinement of benefit costs on the overall costs associated with benefits from what was projected a year ago to what the actual costs are. For instance, OMERS, the rate did not increase in 2017, and we don't anticipate it'll increase in 2018. So those are the types of things that make that up. And then, of course, the transit business plan itself, which has an added cost of $900,000. This is a snapshot that's in your budget and in the report itself. It basically identifies the variances by your service groups and your departments. And it shows some departments actually going down, other departments going up. It's obvious that transportation services would be going up if we're adding enhanced services to transit. So that's how to read that particular chart. I again want to compliment how staff see the total cost of running the city and not just department specific, so that we have departments helping to contribute to the overall cause. And that's what makes a good team that I'm proud to work in this capacity in. The multi-year forecasts basically look like this, that at this point in time, based on what we can tell you, the 2018 tax increase would be in the range of 2.9%. That means we need to find about $800,000. And judging by what we did for this budget, we found $2 million. Therefore, we believe that this is an acceptable gap that we'll close for you over the course of the next year. 2019 would be 4.1. Now, if you took the 0.4% out of 2018, then that 4.1 would come down to 3.8. You see how that works? So these are cumulative numbers. So as we find net adjustments to lower the impact on tax revenues as a total, tax revenue requirements, then the impacts to the other years will come down. So it will be a challenge. And we put the challenge out to the external agencies to be partners with us in this case. Tomorrow night you will get to see how some of the agencies could not stay within the limit that we put before them, but they do know that we expect them in future years to come back to within those limits. Those limits need to be somewhere in the range of inflation, because as you know, it's inflation plus 1% for capital. It's not 2.5% for everybody. And so that'll be what we'll continue to focus on in that regard. And I would say to you as council, there may be points in time when we may have to come to you and ask you for direction to change some service levels. And I know we always put this out here, and I know it's always a difficult thing to do, and we don't like to do that, but there are occasions when I think service levels could be considered to be reduced from where they are in some services, because everything changes. And so it'll be in those policy decisions, if we have to go there, that we will need to make some inroads if we're going to see the tax increases held to the 2.5% level, particularly in the 2019 and 2020 period. But we will continue to work through that and continue to update as we should, and we'll have improved forecasts for you in the 2018 budget sessions. So this is simply what it looks like. The budget gap would be $850,000 in 2018. It would be about $2.6 million in 2019, and then probably close to $2.2 million or $3 million in 2020. And that's it for the overview, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any high-level questions for the CIO at this point? And again, we'll have a more detailed presentation later from Ms. Kennedy as well, but yes, Councillor Hutchison?
I just wondered if you could tell us a bit more about supplementary taxes, what that is and how that works, please.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So supplementary taxes is when at the beginning of every year in December, the Finance Department receive what's called the assessment roll. The assessment roll calculates all of the new additions to the roll during the year. It could be additional housing units that are become occupied. It could be commercial units, could be residential, it could be multi-residential or industrial units. And we estimate that because you have units that are increasing on the basis of assessment growth, and you have units that are becoming vacant as a result of commercial units being vacant, demolitions for different types of things, assessment reductions. So supplemental taxes is like a net expansion band that can go positive or negative. So at this point in time, we had forecasts that we would be in the range of $700,000 or $800,000 for 2018 for supplementary taxes. The actual number for 2017, the actual number that we're prepared to put in the budget now is $1.3 million. Now, those supplementary taxes, they become growth for assessment in the following year. So they're kind of mid-year transition costs, and then in the following year, that increases your overall base of assessment, which then generates more taxation revenue to you. The one thing, and we've commented about this a couple of times, is that You may have a number of different projects that are at various stages through the planning cycle, through the planning decision-making process. And then if they get challenged at the Ontario Municipal Board, that delays the building permit, delays obviously the occupancy, depending on how long it takes for the municipal board to hear, and depending on the final outcome of that decision, it could be anywhere from 8 months to 2.5 years. So that, at this point in time, we have a number of applications before the Ontario Municipal Board at various stages, and we're trying to do our best guess as to where those building permits would fall if they were to be approved in some form, and then when the occupancy would happen. And so there's been, I would say, much more detailed analysis this year than any year in the past, trying to get as precise as we can in order to make sure that we can budget fairly and at the same time not put us in a position where we're over budgeting in order to create a deficit, because we don't ever want to be in a deficit position, because then under municipal law, under municipal act, you need to catch that deficit up in the following year's tax increases in addition to the current year budget.
So assessment starts on the occupancy date, correct?
That's correct. Occupancy is the trigger.
Right. Thank
Councillor Neal.
I just wanted to thank you and staff for finding a way to make our transit master plan for the next couple of years, bringing it in as planned. I think that's a tremendous boost, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Camden.
Thank you, and through you. One question a lot of us councillors get is related to the amount of taxation that goes to each household based on their assessment. How, as a council, going forward, would we be able to lower the amount of burden, or lower the burden on the taxpayer? So I know, for example, in Toronto, they'll have a tax rate of, say, like an $800,000 house would have a $5,000 tax bill, whereas in Kingston, that would be about $11,000 or $10,000. How do we lower the amount of burden per household on a go-forward basis?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there's a couple of ways to do that. If you had a significant growth in your other classes, as an example, if you had a growth on the multi-residential front, or you had a growth on the commercial industrial front, as an example, the proportionate share of the mix of overall assessment would see, in that case, the residential payer in total pay more, or pay less, because other classes would be paying more. Now, we need to be careful in Kingston because we do have a number of incremental tax policies that actually delay some of that assessment getting to the tax roll. Things like exemptions for employment land or industrial building permits, exemption for DC and impost. So sometimes it takes 3 or 4 years from that new tax assessment to actually find its way through to the net budget. Same way with brownfields, and you'll hear us periodically cautioning council to say, you know, we've done a great job on some of those policies, but we can't always go back to the well for tax incremental financing, because you're basically living on borrowed time to get money onto your tax bill. With respect to Toronto, there is a significant amount of growth that occurs in Toronto that is substantial, and they usually have been absorbing much of their tax rate increase by the growth that comes in. And that is a way to absorb the impact to the taxes. The other reality is, and this is maybe a little bit off of your question, but just to let you know, that when a reassessment is done, it doesn't mean if the individual's property went up from assessment purposes that automatically triggers a tax increase. Reassessment is on the basis of redistributing the overall assessment value of the municipality. So some will go up and some will go down, and there's a requirement from a finance perspective that you need to recalculate that opening tax rate and then apply the new tax rate. In this case, it would be 2.5%. So if a residential property did not go up at the same rate as the overall average for residential properties, then you would actually see a reduced tax bill from the 2.5% increase adjustment that is contemplated here as the tax rates to something less as a result of that.
Deputy Mayor Bowman.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. So essentially, we have 2.5% as our goal, and 1% of that for the benefit of the public is obviously infrastructure. The other 1.5% is for services. And again, I'd like to commend staff for finding those numbers. But is it safe to say that at some point we're going to run into these efficiencies, and really the only way to make that up is to basically increase our density and develop, as was mentioned, where Toronto was able to make up those numbers? And if we don't do that, at some point we're not going to be able to get blood from that stone anymore. Is that a fair comment?
Through you, well, I think that, you know, the whole theory of intensification has that as definitely an objective. When you invest in infrastructure and you size it appropriately to the point that you can intensify in order to utilize or maximize the opportunity of that investment, then you will have a better return on investment than you would if you had continued development into areas that required you to apply more services. And so I'm not sure that you'll ever get to an ultimate best outcome, but it's definitely on the basis of a theoretical assessment of the incremental service costs relative to the incremental revenues that would come as a result of intensification.
So it's safe to say that with intensification, we spread those costs out over a greater number of people, thereby reducing, as to Councillor Cannon's question, the amount that each individual would have to pay.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you very much. Next, we will move on to the Utilities Kingston budget presentation. Invite Mr. Keach to the podium.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's my pleasure to present the Utilities Kingston operating budgets to Council this evening. And while I was listening to Mr. Hunt answer his questions, I was trying to think of a way to start the presentation off. And what I kind of came up with is this is probably one of the more boring budget presentations that I've ever done in the 18 years or so that I've been doing this to Council. Now, that's probably good for Council, because the reason I say that, I would say we're well within all the parameters that has been set out for us. So there's no capital budget that we are presenting. Council probably recalls that there was a 4-year capital plan for Utilities Kingston and the Public Works Group that was approved back at the start of your term on Council. And I always think it's extremely important that when we get approval of that long-term plan, that we live within that plan unless there are extraordinary services that would require us to come back to Council. So we are not looking for any changes to the capital. Our operating budgets as presented are under 2%. As far as rate increases go, we got approval for the water and wastewater rate increases to support the significant capital plans back when the capital plans were approved. The increases for 2017, I think for 2018 as well, for water and wastewater were 3.5% and 3% respectively. But in addition to that, we also got Council to approve a plan where we were trying to get a better balance between what the residential customer and the industrial commercial customers were paying. So as a result of that, the overall increase for each customer for water and wastewater on their total bill is 2.2% for this year and next year as well. So that's all approved. And just to provide that as information from a natural gas perspective, for our portion of the bill, so the local distribution costs that Utilities Kingston is responsible for, we're not looking for any increase for that again this year. And when I say again this year, we did not last year. I think 2015 was the last time that we were actually looking for an increase in that. The only part that we're actually looking for an increase in the total budget is our appliance rental business, and that is a competitive business. And what we try to do there with our rates is to, achieve the maximum profit that we can back to the municipality, while still staying competitive within the business, keeping as big a customer share as we can. And some of the miscellaneous charges that we have where it's fair to charge the actual customer as opposed to having in the user rates. I think for some of the meters, we're actually moving to a actual cost as opposed to a flat rate. So in summary, I've kind of gone through my whole presentation here, but just I think to make some of the key points so that council will be aware of them as I go through it. The one piece of bad news, I guess, and we'll touch on this in the slide, and council may have some questions and detail in this regard, but that's concerning the cap and trade that the provincial government is requiring us to put in place on the natural gas utility. And the charges for the cap and trade will actually be within our local distribution costs. Again, it's not something that we at Utilities Kingston or in the end of the City of Kingston will be able to benefit from. It's actually a pass-through. You're not going to gain or lose. But there's a fairly significant increase as a result of that, and it's about an 8% hit on the customer's overall bill. Our portion of the bill is about close to 20% on that. So that's sort of a high-level overview of the presentation I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to walk through just a few of the differences between UK and the city, talk about how we are working towards the council priorities that you put in place at the start of your term. Look at the numbers, a couple of key projects, talk about the cap and trade, and then at the end I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the conservation plans that we have in place. So the first slide that's up here, I think you've seen quite frequently at these meetings and at the shareholders meetings. It just looks at the difference between Utilities Kingston and the City of Kingston. We are a standalone corporation, but under contract we do manage the utilities that we're here talking about tonight. The gas, water, the sewer, and the appliance rental business. So how does the budget process for these work? Very similar to what you do for the rest of the municipality, the wastewater or the sewer. The water, the natural gas distribution business, and the appliance rental business are all owned by the city. They're managed by Utilities Kingston. Budgets and rates are approved in parallel to the municipal budgeting process. Just a slide up here again talking a little bit about Utilities Kingston. This is something that we've actually changed over the last little while, our mission and vision. And again, we are a corporation that is owned by the municipality. We see our mission is to manage, operate, and maintain community infrastructure to deliver safe, reliable services and a personal customer experience. Our vision is to advance a unique multi-utility model to benefit our customers and build better communities. And I think that this fits in quite nicely with the direction of council in your strategic plan. Just going to touch on a couple points in here, because again, I think some of this fits in with the strategic plan that I'm going to talk a little bit more. The first one, the best return, lowest cost to the municipality. On the best return, that does reflect on a number of the businesses that we operate that provides a return back to the municipality, that being the electric, the fiber, the natural gas, and the appliance rental business. And between that, it's a little over $5 million that we will be returning to the municipality in 2017. The other one I'm going to touch on here, because it does tie in again with council priorities, and it's an area that we have been, I would say, very focused on over 2016, the current year. And we'll be very much in 2017, and that's maximizing coordination for development and infrastructure renewal. And I think particularly on the development and how that helps you, the city departments, the planning department, on your focus towards intensification. So as I said, previously approved the capital budgets and the rates. This just very quickly looks at the capital budgets that were approved, and there's one number here in particular that I wanted to focus on, and that was actually in last year's budget, 2016, in wastewater or sewer, $101 million. And that is to fund one of the key projects that we are currently undertaking. And I've got a couple pictures here. This is a fairly current picture of the Point Pleasant water treatment plant. That's the water treatment plant in the west behind Invista off Sunny Acres Road. This is just being completed. I think we are having a ribbon cutting ceremony December the 8th, of which you are all invited to. It's a project that's gone on for about 3 years, significant expansion to the hydraulic capacity of treated water in the west. And I think this is very timely to allow for some growth opportunities that we are hoping are going to take place in the western part of the city. The project that I just mentioned, the number that I asked council to look at in the capital budget, the 101 million, that was 101 million for all wastewater projects that year. But a significant part of that is for the Cataraqui Bay wastewater treatment plant, located in the vicinity of the water treatment facility that we just looked at, a little bit to the east of that, again behind the Invista plant. We just, and when I say just, about 2 weeks ago, signed a contract with the construction company to start the upgrades and the capacity increase to this facility, and it is a joint project, and where significant upgrades to an older plant and significant increase to the hydraulic capacity. And again, a very, very timely project that will help us in servicing a number of developments that are proposed for the western part of the municipality. So key project that we will be working on over the next 3 years. So I said I want to talk a little bit about how we are working on a number of the council priorities. Create a smart economy. This generally is around the fiber optic business. Now again, this is not being presented here tonight as far as rates and that go, but and budgets, but is a different business. I think council is aware of. We have been into it for 15 years. It does provide a bit of a return back to the municipality. I think even more important, with the economy that we're in today, and again, the strategic goals and the focus of the city, you know, the smart city, the different type of industries that the city of Kingston is looking at developing, this is becoming a very, very valuable tool for the municipality. There are some projects that we are looking at from this business over the next 2 or 3 years that are, if successful, I think could help move the city forward in this means quite significantly. Invest in infrastructure. I think this one goes without saying. At the end of the day, Utilities Kingston is an asset management company. It manages your infrastructure for you. Some of the key things that we're looking at are the key goals that were noted in the strategic plan: maintain and improve roadways and sidewalks. Again, the coordination that we have with the city engineering department, I think it helps us achieve great strides in this way. Some of the specific projects, completing the John Connor Boulevard project, we did do a fair amount of work there from an electric perspective last year, and just coordinating all the rest of the utilities as we work on that key project. And just, you know, continuing to support the current infrastructure plan and recommend to council to support, you know, future plans to council. And I think this is one of the key things that we will start to work on, and I will probably talk about this again in my second presentation with Public Works and Engineering, is the multi-year plans I mentioned at the start of this. We are not here today looking for any additional capital. We're not recommending any more capital expenditures. We are comfortable living within what was approved before. But we will, at the start of 2017, start working to prepare the next multi-year plan, and probably a little bit of a different twist on this one, looking to support more developments, working with the planning department closer than what we have in the past, and also with bringing the transit department into public works with that as well. Plan a livable city, foster intensification in the city core. You know, very key, the work that we do at Utilities Kingston, making sure the services are available for any development, you know, definitely within the city core and really anywhere within the municipality. If you look at the work that is being just completed on Princess Street, key project Division Street next year, and then the final phase of the Princess Street portion of the Downtown Action Plan, planned for 2018. So again, the coordination is extremely important. The other one that I put up, advance a vibrant waterfront. You know, there are no key items in the strategic plan that Utilities Kingston is focusing on. But with what we do at Utilities Kingston, the collection and treatment of wastewater, working a bit with stormwater, combined sewers as well, and water treatment. I think this area, again, the work that we do is key in making sure that the City of Kingston has a vibrant waterfront. And I've had the opportunity of doing a number of presentations across the province for different things that we do at Utilities Kingston. And one of the things that I put out is, there's a lot of talk about greening the city. I think some of the work that we do, I like to say that we're bluing the city. We have a great waterfront here, and I think that what we're doing to protect it and improve it goes a long way in that bluing of the City of Kingston. Boston Open Government, again, if you go back to the one of the first slides where I looked at our mission and vision, the excellent customer service is something that we have built right in there. We're very aware of the importance of that to council and to the municipality, and that is something that we also want to foster at Utilities Kingston. So looking at the numbers, the proposed operating budgets for 2017, we are just over 33 million, a little over $500,000 increase from the 32.5 million last year, a little bit under 2%. The one comment that I will make, if you compare each business, and I look at each of these as its own separate business because we have separate rates, separate books for each of these. In some areas, it may be a little more than 2%. In other areas, it may be a little less than 2%. And one of the things that we do with our model is try to achieve efficiencies where we can, and we don't have, like all of our people, or we don't have people that just focus on wastewater or gas or water. We try to use people across all the businesses, and I would put the electricity in here as well. So as a result of that, depending on what the focus is for the year, we may be doing a bit more work in one area than the other area in one year, but then that may very well go back the next year. And I mentioned already some additional increases to the appliance rental business and the miscellaneous charges. So the cap and trade, this is something that we are dealing with from a natural gas perspective. On the electricity side, it's viewed that there's going to be very little, if any, impact at all. And I'll just make that comment. We're not talking about electric budgets here today, but because of all the efforts in getting off coal, the view is that there's going to be minimal impact in the province. But there will be impact to natural gas users. We are required to participate in the market and pass the costs along to the consumer. It's looked at being an impact of 3.5 cents per cubic meter. What does that translate to a customer's bill? About $80 a year. And as I said at the start, it's about an 8% increase on the total bill. So again, it's a fairly significant increase when we're talking 2% increases on most other things here. And for our portion of the bill, it will be built into that, and it's about a 20% increase to that. So again, despite the fact that we've held the line on increases for the portion of the bill that we have to work with the last couple of years, it will increase this year for the cap and trade impacts. I wanted to finish off just with a couple of comments in regards to conservation. And I do believe that a lot of this ties into the strategic priorities of the City of Kingston. And I know it's something that Council has always been keenly interested in. And I'm not going to read through these slides, but just a couple of things I wanted to put up for Council's interest. This slide here looks specifically at the achievements that we have made on the electricity front in conservation. And I believe we talked at some of the shareholders meetings about this, but I'm talking about at the moment is Kingston Hydro, are mandated by the province to achieve certain goals from a conservation perspective, both from an overall load, kilowatt hours, and from a demand perspective, kilowatts. And our first 4-year targets ended in 14. We were one of the very few LDCs in the province to actually meet our targets. And one thing that I'm actually proud to say, in December 20th council meeting, there's actually going to be a representative from the IESO that's going to come and present us with an award and talk to council a little bit about some of the achievements that we've made and some of the things that are going on provincially. For 2015, moving into the next round in 2016, we feel that we've already been very successful in that regard. And again, I'm not going to read through it, but that just indicates some of the things that we've achieved. This slide here, although it's quite difficult to see, if you go on our website and look at our annual report for last year, and there's some interesting facts here. It looks at what we've achieved from an electricity perspective from conservation for the homeowner, also for water, what that equates to dollars, and some of the different things that we have done. And just putting it up here because I think council and the public may not be aware of the the significant amount of work that goes on in that regard. And it does tie back into budgets and rates, because at the end of the day, if we can offer customers ways to conserve, it costs them less money. So that is the extent of the presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Stroud.
I don't recall. I saw something on one of the very first slides. It was the corporate governance structure slide. If you can quickly pull that up. Yeah. I don't remember that box that says generation company yet to be named from previous presentations. Is it new, or is it just was not really part of the chart before?
It's not new. It's been there for some time. We generally don't talk about it because it's an inactive company. We set it up some time ago, maybe 10 years ago. It wasn't set up right when we incorporated. We initially had Kingston Hydro and Utilities Kingston tied together, with one as a parent and one as a sibling company. But with some of the regulations that we're under with the Ontario Energy Board, having it set up that way, it gave them an opportunity to basically look into some of the municipal business and the fiber business. So we separated them out. There are only certain things that a municipality is allowed to do or be in. Generation is one of them. And at the time, the FIT programs and the microfit were coming out, and we thought we may be getting into something along those lines. So for two reasons: one, for the regulatory reasons. If you have interest, it's fairly complicated, and we can talk about that offline. But then the other one was, we thought we might get into generation, but actually what we found was, for the community as a whole, it was better for us to work towards enabling others to get into this, as opposed to investing our money ourselves. So what we actually tried to do is work with the City of Kingston to install these projects, because at the end of the day, they're not taxed, and the revenue stays with them. Whereas if Kingston Hydro or this company were to make revenues to pay back to the municipality, there's taxes and whatnot. It's a long answer to a short question, sorry.
Thank you. So it's essentially dormant at the moment, but if things change, it could be populated with something.
Yeah, the dormant is an excellent way of describing it. That company.
Councillor Neal.
Yes, I applaud you for the healthy reserves, both utility reserves and the donations to the municipal reserve that show up in this budget. Is it accurate to say that, with the sole exception of gas, all increases, in fact, are either near inflation or below inflation, but the cap and trade provincially mandated costs are what's driving the gas prices up? Is that an accurate kind of summation of the budget?
Yeah, particularly if we're looking at residential, like I said, the water and wastewater are about 2%. The gas, our portion of the gas is actually zero, and it's been zero for the last 2 years. The cap and trade that is provincially mandated is, as I said, about 8% on the total bill. But yeah, again, the short answer to your question is yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Schell.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. So the cap and trade, because it's provincial, it's mandated. We can't do anything to reduce it, to benefit from it. There's nothing, in electric terms, there are many things that we're doing to reduce costs, but the cap and trade, it's a provincial thing, and they will decide who benefits, who pays from the money that's being created in this pool.
So I'm going to say, yes, you're correct. I'm just wondering if one of my staff want to add on to that.
Ms. Taylor.
Through you, Your Worship, there are some things, so essentially we have to purchase emission allowances for every cubic meter our gas customers use, and that we get allocated a portion of the cap. And one of the ways that we can benefit customers is actually to promote conservation programs in the natural gas area, which isn't something we just introduced some conservation programs for commercial gas customers this year. Now is the time to start introducing it for residential customers, because every cubic meter reduction is one less allowance that we need to buy. And there's also an opportunity, I think the provincial government is focusing on creating renewable gas. If we can find what mechanisms to create renewable gas, for example, from our sewage digestion process, that reduces the cubic meters that we have to purchase, and also the allowances that have to offset those. So there are some things that we can do, but we still are trying to figure out the cap and trade world, and we'll have more knowledge next year.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Your Worship. Keeping with the cap and trade discussion here. So for the $80 average annual increase to the residents for the purposes of this mandated change here, so it's going to be on the delivery charges line. So currently, can you just give me an estimate of what like an average delivery charge would be for a consumer?
So I think an average delivery charge is about $20, $25, that range. Today. Looking at Mr. Murphy.
Through you, Your Worship. Currently, the local distribution charge for a typical customer on a yearly basis is $450, and that will increase to $530 per year next year.
Okay, thanks. So a separate question then. The programs that will be put in place for conservation for natural gas, will they be similar to what exists currently for residents who have benefited from any programs who have electricity, for example, electric heat? Is it the same style, same kind of saving?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, it will be a similar style. And it turns out we are actually actively working with Union Gas, and Union Gas has funding to assist Utilities Kingston gas customers as well. So there will be information posted on our website shortly. These programs are currently, they've been around, but they have soft launched them, so we'll be starting to promote them actively shortly.
Okay, next on my list is Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I'm also going to ask about cap and trade. From what I understand, we're going to experience something like this every year with cap and trade going towards a limit. Is that safe to assume, or how does that impact as that cap comes on implemented?
So, as I mentioned, we are still acquiring details on this, but my understanding of the program as it's designed is the province starts 2017 with a certain cap, and then each year the cap will be reduced. And therefore, we still have to purchase emission allowances to cover the amount of credits, but it's going to get harder and harder to keep below the cap. If you keep below the cap, then you have credits that you can trade to other partners who may be above the cap. And that's where it's an actual market, it's an auction, so the actual cost is not known until we start purchasing the credits or the allowances. And therefore it will be in what we've come to know as a variance account. So we think 3.5 cents per cubic meter is about what we will need. But if we actually are able to spend 3.2 cents, then it gets put towards future purchases, or if we overspend, we have to continue to adjust. It will be similar to the commodity that we do in gas, where we adjust quarterly if the price goes up. But it's all a pass-through. It's just the actual costs to us.
Okay, thank you. And sort of to follow up, I think that the benefit or the dollars that the provincial government earns from the cap and trade program, they haven't decided what to do with that yet. We have some we've heard that there's ideas. Can you confirm that there could be benefits coming back to our municipality or other municipalities based on future provincial legislation that we should be talking to our provincial politicians about?
Yes, the Greenhouse Gas Act actually provides for a fund to be created from the revenues that will be created by people like ourselves buying emission allowances. The Act actually specifies certain areas that projects would be considered. I think transit is one. There's some target towards sort of a mid-sized commercial electricity customers, but that's still details that we'll have to follow. But they have put rules around what the funds can be spent for.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick one here. I missed what you said the increases to wastewater and water were going to be. I think you said it, but I didn't quite catch it.
Sorry, the increases to the water and wastewater rates, you said?
Yeah, the rates, yes.
So the rate increases for water and wastewater were approved with the 4-year capital plan back 2 years ago.
Right.
For 2017, and I believe 2018 as well, for residential customers, they were 3.5% and 3%. At the same time, council approved a report that we brought forward that looked at we call it cost allocation. So the cost to service a residential customer and the charges that we're allocating for it, and the same for commercial and industrial. And it was viewed at that point that we were over collecting for the residential and not collecting enough for the industrial commercial, and tried to get that balance better, and council approved balancing that off over quite a number of years. I can't quite remember the length of time, but with what they approved for the 4 years that they approved the budget, it basically changed the 3.5% and 3% to a combined 2.2% for the water and wastewater for 2017 and 2018.
Good, thank you. I heard the 2.2 and I couldn't quite figure out how that worked out. So you saw the news item where the Premier is doing a mea culpa about electricity prices. Have you any idea? I don't suppose you know how much that would be, but and to two-pronged question. One is, do you have any idea how they would approach that? And two, what effect that would have on the utilities Kingston, or Kingston Hydro, I guess.
The politically correct answer to that is no, I don't. I can give you an unpolitically correct answer, but I probably shouldn't. I'm not that close to retirement.
Oh, go for it. Come on now.
No, I don't know. I know it is coming close to election time, and this is a hot topic for the province. I think you're going to see, we've seen a fair amount of changes to this, with one thing coming on, one thing coming off. The electric bill over the last little while. I think you're going to see them make some changes, and based on the presentation that she made last night, they're gonna, or not last night, last week, they're probably going to have to be significant. I'd say we have some concerns as to what they're going to be. Concerns that if you listen to her speech, she very clearly pointed her finger at LDCs like Kingston Hydro. So our prices over the last 10 years have gone up on average 2, 3, 4% a year. The rest of the bill has gone up about 10% a year. So now I'm into my unpolitically correct. I think the province needs to focus on what they can control and not on us, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm not sure where this is going to go, but we will be following it very closely.
And at the moment, the increase in electricity rates will be?
Randy, do you know what our, so we get our rates approved by the Ontario Energy Board. Last year, we did similar to kind of what we do at City Council. We actually got approval for 5 years worth of rates from the Ontario Energy Board. So Randy can talk just to what the increases we're looking at for the next year.
Yep. Through your worship, the electricity distribution portion of the bill that Kingston Hydro controls will be increasing approximately $2.66 per month on the average residential bill. The commodity prices did not increase November 1st. They stayed the same as they were May the 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McLaren.
Thank you. I had 9 questions, but you answered most of them through the email, so just a few follow-up questions on some of these. And this is the first one with regards to the appliance business and how it's the budget's dropping by $7,500. And the answer that you gave me was that the gas part, there's going to be new services offered or new requirements, for example, government inspections of gas meters and valves and increased service calls. But it's unclear to me why the appliance rental is connected somehow to the gas.
So I'll go back to one of the comments I made at the start. So if I look at the model that we have at Utilities Kingston, one of the nice things about it, it will allow us to focus sort of in one area if there is a fair amount of work that needs to be done in a year as opposed to another area. So some of the service guys from a gas perspective can work on the appliance rental business, or they can work on changing gas meters. We have quite a number of gas meters that we need to change because of regulations in 2017. So we see more of a focus in that area in 2017 than on the appliance rental business. So it's just basically adjusting resources one way or another.
Wonderful. So it's not a market loss or anything like that?
No, as a matter of fact, I'd say this business has, I mean, it's a small business, but we have done quite nicely with it the last number of years. And we are currently looking at, maybe some different options that we can get into. And again, I go back to the 4-year plan. So when we come forward in 2019, with the next capital plan, I think we might have some different options to grow that business even more. So again, a bit of a long answer, but no, it's not, we're not lessening our focus in any way if that's what the concern is.
Yes, thank you very much. And the second one, which was number 3 that I asked you, it's about the movement from a 10-year planning horizon to a 15-year planning horizon. And the answer here was that it creates greater financial certainty in planning. And the second part of the question was that the answer is that a 20 to 30-year horizon would provide even greater certainty. That seems to be the sweet spot, because if you go beyond that, the certainty decreases. I'm curious if there's any plans to move the horizon further along.
Hey, that's a good question. It's I think we're always looking at increasing that horizon where we can, and for different components, it's maybe easier to do. So, as a couple of examples, the 2 pictures that I showed you of the treatment facilities, that one just completed, the other one we're just starting. As we worked on the design for that, acquiring land, a number of things, we actually for those looked out 20-ish years, Jim, for the next expansion of those facilities. So we don't have detailed budgets where they're in, but we've got some pretty good ideas as to when they may be required, how we would go about it, and in today's dollars, which may mean nothing 30 years from now, a bit as to what it would cost. When we get into some of the pipes and the roads and whatnot, it's pretty hard to see out more than 10 years as to where that work would go. So, we try to have detailed plans 10 years, which we're taking to 15 years. And, as you do these, you refine them, you get better. We have better master plans. A lot more data from camera work, metering, and that type of stuff. And I think we want to continuously push the envelope, but I think at this point, for things other than, the big facilities, the plants, the pumping stations, electrically, the substations and whatnot, it's pretty hard currently to go beyond the 15 years.
Thank
Get
you.
another long answer, sorry.
No worries. I'm just mentioning also that because there's a growing body of knowledge out there that's suggesting that an infinite horizon in these kind of fiscal planning matters might be one of the better lenses to look at things. And we'll be talking about that soon, I'm sure. And the third question was just, could you remind me why fiber is not on this budget?
So we are here tonight presenting the municipally owned utilities, basically the businesses that the city of Kingston owns directly. So that's the ones that we're talking about tonight. The fiber optic business, the city of Kingston or any municipality is not allowed to directly own a business like that. By the Municipal Act and other legislation, it's pretty limited as to what you could be in. So you cannot own directly a electric company. You can own the company, but you can't own the poles and the wires. The fiber is the same. So like the poles and the wires for the electric business are in Kingston Hydro, that type of equipment for the fiber optic businesses in Utilities Kingston. So that type of stuff goes to the Utilities Kingston board. And we report a bit on that at the shareholders meetings.
Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you very much.
If I could just have the liberty for a second, I'm going to do something that I'm probably going to get in trouble for, but I'm close enough to retirement, I can kind of do this. So a couple comments. The cap and trade, very complicated. We are learning it, and I think the questions were great, and we will continue to report back on it. So the two people from my shop that have been handling this are Randy Murphy and Nancy Taylor. And I just want to point out that this will be the last budget that Nancy's here for because she's actually retiring in February. So I just wanted to make that note and say that we will miss her dearly at Utilities Kingston. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on then to number 6, which is deliberations and approval of municipal utilities operating and capital budgets. Mr. Clerk, can I see you for a moment? Okay, so first we have the approval of the 2017 operating budgets for the municipal utilities. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor George, seconded by Councillor Holland. Please vote. And that carries. Item B is approval of rate changes for 2017 for miscellaneous charges and the appliance rental business. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Allen. Please vote. And that carries. Item C, approval of local distribution rate changes for natural gas. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Stroud, seconded by Councillor Neal. Please vote. And that carries. On to item number 7, municipal operating and capital budget excluding utilities overview. Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I thought I'd just give you a bit of a preview of what's happening for the rest of this evening, because you'll notice we have changed the agenda a little bit this year. We found last year the first night was a little bit light. You were gung-ho ready to go, and then we sent you home early. So we've changed it around a little bit this year. So I'm going to do an overview, which hopefully if I talk fast enough will be a little shorter than it was last year. I'm going to try. And then we're going to have the start into some of the commissioner presentations tonight. So Mr. Keach will be back again with the Transportation and Infrastructure Services portfolio, and then Ms. Hurdle will be here to review the Community Services portfolio, and that'll take us to the end of this evening. So I want to talk a little bit tonight to start off, just looking at, similar to last year, some of the economic and market considerations. Certainly, we look at CPI fairly closely. I had the advantage of being able to attend an economic update on Friday that TD Bank put on, which was quite interesting, and so we've got a lot of very current information from them in terms of some of their assumptions and forecasts. Looking at CPI for Ontario at October 2016 was about 2.1%. So in that 2% region that we normally talk about and that we target. But I've also provided, and I don't have this for Ontario, but for Canada, the energy CPI, which is about 2.5, and then CPI Canada excluding the energy, which is about 1.4. And I've pulled the energy out because the majority of things in energy, the big things in energy that affect us are fuel, so our diesel and our gas, and then our utilities, so our hydro costs. And you'll see as we go through some of this overview, and you'll hear from the commissioners over the next couple of nights, some of the challenges that we've had in those two areas. And both of them, well, one at least higher than CPI. So those are looked at specifically. So take those out of the mix. What we've got left is basically a CPI of, say, around 1.5%. So it just gives you a bit of a ballpark as to what we've been using in terms of creating some of the budget estimates. So in terms of a few other things that do affect us in more specific areas within the budget, so we talk about the US dollar. The forecast that TD provided us on Friday is that they expect that our loonie is going to remain a subdued level, forecasted around 75 cents to a US dollar. That definitely has effect for us both in operating and in capital. We do have some operating costs that we pay in US dollars, particularly around some of our database software maintenance. Some of our information technology costs are in US dollars. And we also have some capital that we're buying from the other side of the border. So those have been built into the budget estimates. Some upside and downside risks to the new presidency that happened a couple of weeks ago. And basically, I think the message here that we heard is that the markets are really waiting to see what's going to happen. There's definitely some thoughts in terms of where the U.S. government is going to go. Certainly, there's been talk about, with the new president, about tax cuts and about infrastructure spending. And when we hear that, then we start to think about rising inflation happening south of the border. That tends to impact us eventually down the road. And of course, with rising inflation, then there is definitely rumors that the state's government, the federal government, will be increasing interest rates. We're not seeing that in the near future in Canada. The Canadian markets are keeping an eye on that, but again, it's kind of a bit of a wait-and-see approach. So I don't think things were quite as volatile as I thought they might be initially, but certainly gradually may affect us over a longer period of time. The Canadian economy then, in terms of some of those effects as well, is expected to grow at a modest pace, with GDP around 1.7 to 2%. So again, things are sort of leveling out. And as I said, the Bank of Canada overnight rate on hold at 0.5%. So no discussion in the near term to start increasing that. The other thing that came up was talking about lower commodity prices are here to stay. And I've put, that's my question mark on there. That's probably the one thing I questioned them on Friday, because I'm not convinced, certainly when we talk about fuel prices, that they are here to stay lower. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So in terms of budget considerations, obviously our interest rates, our operating revenues reflect short-term rates, and they're projected to remain low right out to the 2020 mark. I think we've kept them flat at about $1.2 million. Some volatility from the recent election on the long-term rates, but our investment models, which are our long-term investment strategies, are remaining at 3%. So we have still continued to build in 3%, and today we tend to be around that mark. A few a little bit less, but some still holding a little bit above. So that's an average that we continue to use. And of course, we continue to monitor borrowing strategies. We do have some flexibility with Infrastructure Ontario in terms of when we can issue debt, even if a project is not completed. So if we see that rates were starting to rise, we have the ability to lock in fairly quickly with Infrastructure Ontario based on the terms that we've got with them. And I've talked a bit about the Canadian dollar. So cap and trade, Mr. Keach and I should have traded notes before tonight. I'll give you a little bit more information that probably doesn't give you much more than what he and Ms. Taylor had already provided. But looking at this from the municipal standpoint, so municipalities, and I guess I should reiterate again what Mr. Keach said, we don't know everything about this today. We're still trying to figure out what's going on. There's a lot of direction from the government that has yet to come. So we're trying to read between the lines a little bit. But the municipality is not a participant, which is, I believe, a little different from the gas operations. So we're just like an individual in terms of what this does in terms to affect our costs. So just a bit of a summary, and most of you are probably familiar with this in terms of some of the emission targets and the whole reason for the cap and trade program. By 2050, the province is looking to have emissions reduction of 80%. Back to, I think, a question that was asked, is this a one-time, or are we going to see continual costs? I think based on this slide, we are going to see continual cost increases, and that's certainly something that we're trying to keep an eye on. I don't think this is a 2017 thing and then it's going to level out. I think we're going to continue to see costs one way or another coming through. I just wanted to touch on the federal carbon pricing because that's also been in the news recently. And the feds have also set a price per ton, a levy per ton, but they've also said within that legislation that the provinces with equivalency can opt out. So looking at the national prices that have been set, provincially we're at $18 a ton. So we're okay, we think, at least for the next couple of years. There should be no additional cost from the national carbon program that's in place because the provincial program is within those guidelines at $18 a ton. Not sure what's going to happen by 2020. We may be looking at some increased costs or a federal component to that bucket of costs that we'll have to deal with. There was a bit of discussion earlier about is there any monies coming our way? And I can say as I go through a little bit of some of the sections within the budget, I'll point out where we have included cap and trade costs. So from a cost side, we've tried to incorporate what we know into the budgets and hopefully mitigate any risk of the unknown in that regard. We have not incorporated any potential funding sources into the budgets, particularly into the capital budget. Our understanding is there is going to be this greenhouse gas reduction account. There was an estimate in some of the research that I was doing of something like $2 billion provincially that will be available. Basically, my understanding is that the monies going into this account are coming from the allowances auction, so some of the credits that will be purchased, as well as any administrative penalties. So people not doing what they're doing and there's a charge, then that would go in. So there is going to be some sort of an account and some likelihood then that there should be some sort of funding program, and we don't know the details of that yet, but there should be monies coming out that we're hoping municipalities will be able to take advantage of. I expect initiatives that they'll be targeting obviously are going to reduce GHG emissions. And there has been a broad list of spending, which I've included here, in terms of things that potentially would be eligible. And you can go down through the list and see what they are. We tried to sort of take some of them, reading again between the lines to figure out perhaps what would be available. And some of the projects that we've looked at are things like public transit. If we were going to any of the energy vehicles, put energy vehicles into our fleet, certainly renewable energy generation, some of the retrofits that we might be doing to some of our assets. So those are things potentially that we're hoping down the road there will be some funding that will come through to help some of those projects, perhaps projects we've also got listed. I was at a presentation that an energy lawyer did about a month ago here in Kingston, and we were talking about the transportation category. And she certainly stretched it in terms of Kingston to say that could include, she thought, active transportation and even something like our waterfront master plan as an example. So you can see there's lots of opportunity there, but until we get a little more direction on what's happening, there's nothing included in the budgets at this point. So in terms of the budget itself, page 10 of the report goes through quite a bit of detail for you by corporate category of all the revenues and expenditures, and I'm sure you've read it at least 2 or 3 times now. It's very exciting reading. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. There's just a couple things that I want to point out to make sure that everybody is on the same page and understands some of what's in there. Just touching base briefly on the taxation revenues, and Mr. Hunt went through this in his preliminary overview, but you'll see that our tax revenues have a 2.5% increase, assessment growth at 1.3 million, which is about 0.6%, and then another 1.3 million of supplementary taxes. That's a new line this year. I'm sure you noticed that. In the past, our supplementary taxes, we tend to put at the same rate as the tax rate at around 2.5%, which makes sense. But because we've had some slowdown in the growth, and particularly we've got some properties that are taking a little longer, they're taking longer to get through the Ontario Municipal Board, they're taking longer to get on through MPAC and onto the assessment roll, the timing of that switches them from growth in 2017, because we'd have them on the roll by, say, the 1st of December when the roll comes in, to being supplementary in 2017, and then they will become growth in 2018. So it's a little bit of a juggling. It's a great big pot, and we have to figure out what's coming in before the end of the year on the assessment roll and what's going to happen in the coming year as supplementary tax. So because it was significantly more than what we've had in the past, we've shown it as a separate line to build up that total revenue pot. And I think, as Mr. Hunt said, that works out, the tax rate increase works out to about $82 on an average assessed household of about $293,000 is our average residential assessment. I think the other thing I just wanted to mention there too, in terms of timing, one of the other challenges that we're dealing with this year is because this is the year of the 4-year reassessment. And so we've had some challenges with MPAC in terms of getting things onto the assessment roll that normally should have been on by now because they've been so busy doing the reassessment work. So we've been working very closely with them, and to be honest, we sort of went through to some of the bigger ones to make sure that those ones were getting on. So we tried to prioritize to make sure that some of the older ones, some of the larger ones were getting on, and then the rest of them will be on certainly early in the new year as they start to catch up. But they definitely were behind this last few months from where they would have been, say, this time last year. So in terms of operating budget revenues, so the big blue spot at the bottom there is our taxation revenue, 3.4% based on those allocations that we just discussed. Fees and charges, I just wanted to touch base on briefly. That's going up about 1.7%. We normally like to see fees and charges going up around the same as taxes. So you have a proportion that for most services, that's proportion of its fees and charges, and some of it is taxes. And if you don't keep that level the same, then we're switching the proportions. And so you've got different groups paying a different proportion for that service. We're a little bit below with fees and charges, but there's a couple of things that are definitely driving that this year. The big one that you'll be hearing about later on is our provincial offenses revenue going down. So it has been going down the last couple of years, and we finally bit the bullet this year and said we need to start budgeting this a little bit closer. So it's down about $375,000, which is our share. We share the provincial offenses revenue with the county at about a 20 to 80% split. So the $375 is our share of that. A couple of other larger ones are building permits. So definitely have been slow the last couple of years. We've left that flat. So again, not getting to 2.5% because we left that one at 0. We also left our investment income at 0% increase, which is about $1.2 million. So some of those things are definitely driving that 1.7, which normally might be a little bit higher. Offsetting that, we do have some extra transit revenues in there as part of the transit business plan, and so that certainly helped to offset back to that 1.7. The other one I just wanted to mention was the government grants, and they're going up 2.2. A couple of things in there. The big thing, of course, the Ontario Works upload, and you'll hear more from Commissioner Hurdle on that. But that upload's going up from 94.2% of their share to 97.2%, which is about a $750,000 revenue for us to the bottom line. So that's certainly been helpful. And we've seen some increases in the provincial gas tax, as well as the federal gas tax, which runs through here. On the expenditure side, the salaries and wages, 2.7%, and that's primarily in line. We've got our union contracts that have been built into that. There have been some transit service enhancements that started in, I believe it was September of 2016. So we're annualizing those, plus we've picked up some for 2017 with respect to the transit business plan. The one I do want to point out, and Gerard mentioned this when he was talking about how we closed the gap, was the supplies, materials, and rents, which has gone up by 0.4%, so pretty much kept flat. That's about a $30 million bucket of costs there, and a lot of that is staff really trying to absorb inflation. There are some discretionary costs in there. We've also seen some results of some efficiencies, just doing things a little bit differently that have helped us to save some costs. And so definitely that's a category, I think, that shows where we've been able to hold the line on a number of costs. If you were to pull out the utility costs, which are more than inflation in there, then that would even look better. So I think that's certainly something worth mentioning. I'm moving on then. In terms of the other thing that's in that category is the fuel budgets. So the fuel budgets have basically been set, our per liter cost for fuel, and this is for regular gas as well as diesel, have been put in the 17 budget at the exact same per liter rate as the 16 budget. Now, I know the first question you're going to ask is, what are you thinking? Because you just reported at the third quarter that you're probably going to have an $800,000 surplus in fuel, and you're right, we are. But there's a couple of things that we've done in terms of including it at that level. And you'll see that was on the gap slide, and this sometimes gets me a little confused, but when Mr. Hunt went through where we found some of the savings, this time last year, we had bumped our fuel up by, I can't remember, something like 5% or something like that, 7% in terms of a projection for this year. So the savings is we brought that back to 0% increase from last year. But we still have that $800,000. So, and this is what we've, our rationale for some of why we've included that. Half of it, and I can say let me get this right now. I better make sure I look it so I tell it to you right. Nope, I don't even have it on here. So a 1 cent a liter, I'll do my math here, it would be $40,000. So 400,000 of the 800,000, or 10 cents per liter, we've identified for price fluctuation. And if you think of what we've seen just driving home at the pumps, 10 cents a liter is not a huge fluctuation of what potentially you could see in a very short time period. And we are talking to the end of 2017. So we've left a little bit of a bridge there in terms of price increase. 5 cents a liter for cap and trade. And so that's what we're understanding per liter the cap and trade cost is going to be for us. Is about 5 cents a liter, so that's about $200,000 that we're needing to earmark for cap and trade. We've also built in about 5 cents a liter over 2016's actuals to incorporate increased biodiesel mix. If you have any technical questions on that, you can wait till Mr. Keach is back and ask him about 5% versus 20% biodiesel. But it costs more, and so we've built that in there, and this is certainly, again, something with respect to environmental initiatives that we're looking at doing. So that makes up our $800,000 and how we've allocated it. I think the other thing that's important to note too is what we don't want to do with fuel, and it's quite easy to do, is you don't want it going up and down and big spikes up and big spikes down. We have to try to keep it as constant as we can, so we're not dealing with bigger problems next year if we haven't done that. In terms of future years, we have built in around the 3% range. This may be a risk for us, and if that $800,000 isn't used up, then that will help in terms of some of this risk in future years. Certainly, the senior government cap and trade programs are expected to continue on, and I think we're going to see increased costs when that all falls out at the end of the day. So hopefully we've got enough to cushion some of that in the future years, but we have built in about 3% at this time. And as I said, further budget reductions over the next 18 to 24 could create a compounding impact in future years. So we want to be careful we don't go down too low in the current year. The other thing, just before I go off of this, in terms of the cap and trade, the other cost that will affect us is the natural gas, as Mr. Keach said. And for us, we've built in about $100,000 within our budget for that should cover off the cubic meter cost that he was mentioning. So the agencies and boards will all be here tomorrow night. I guess before I start on this slide, I should say you will notice on this slide, in comparison to the report, we do have a misprint in the report. It's not a printing problem, it was a person writing the report problem. The Fairmount Home for the Aged shows a 2.8% increase in the council report on the page that lists all those, and it actually is decreasing. It's going down about $55,000. So it's a 2.8% decrease, which is correct on this slide. So I just wanted to point that out. The treasurer of the county was quite quick to point that out to me this morning when she called to let me know that the report wasn't quite right. So we will have everybody here tomorrow night. We have asked the people that are in draft to come, and I know in the past we haven't done that. Normally the county doesn't come. We have asked everybody to come tomorrow night. You may find on a couple of them they won't want to talk specifically about a whole lot of numbers, but I think it's still important for them to come and talk about some of their challenges and some of their services for 2017 and what they're projecting. I do know there's a couple of them that have budget meetings on Wednesday, and so some of the numbers haven't even been approved by their boards. So, but they will be coming to certainly to present. The downtown business improvement area, which is a separate levy, I believe also may have shown as draft in the report, and we've taken that draft off because by the time between when we did the report, they had their budget meeting last week, and their levy has been approved. So that one shows as a draft in the report, but actually is final, and it will be presented as final tomorrow night. You will see the Kingston Access Services, which is a fairly large percentage increase, not as large in terms of dollars because they're a small budget, but we have talked to council the last couple years, and Mr. Frey has been here talking about what was coming with the AODA legislation and some of the fare parity that is now required, as well as parity around the scheduling of services. And availability of services. And so he'll be here tomorrow night to speak to that and some of those estimates, which incidentally we did have forecasted, and he's not here tonight for me to praise him, but his forecast last year for some of this change was bang on. He actually is right close to what he forecasted a year ago that we'd be seeing in 2017. So he certainly has a very good handle on it, and we'll be here tomorrow night. Capital budget. So a proposed capital budget of just over $43 million. And in financing, that you'll see that most of that's coming from our municipal reserve funds, $34 million from our reserve funds, almost $9 million from government grants. And probably the most important line on this slide is the issuance of long-term debt is zero. So we are not recommending any issuance of debt to fund this $43 million for 2017, and I'll come back to that in a minute. in terms of what that means. So included in the $43 million in the 2017 plan, we do have some buses related to the enhanced transit service. And you'll remember we just had a report recently come to council getting some approval for buses with respect to the grant that we had available. And those buses were actually replacement buses for the next 3 years that were included. So there's no replacement buses in these budgets for the next 3 years, actually, nothing in 2017. But any of the purchases with respect to the enhanced transit services and the transit business plan are included, as well as some costs for the downtown terminal. Council just recently approved the 5-year affordable housing commitment, and so we've got $1 million of that included in the 2017 budget. We've got about $4 million, so this does bump our budget up, but this is actually flow-through funds. It's provincially funded programs for social and affordable housing, and so it's an in and out. It's $4.4 million of expenditure, but it's all funded by provincial grants, so that's a good chunk of that $8 million in grants. The Waterfront Master Plan, which Council has approved, we have about $1 million in the plan. If you'll recall, the plan is a 30-year plan, about $65 million, and our previous 15-year plan, so half of that, had about $22 million in it. So we were probably 50% short of what the plan was recommending a year ago in terms of what we had in our 15-year plan. If you look now out over 15 years, we've incorporated that. So we have about $30 million now over the next 15 years, which aligns with the Waterfront Master Plan. Over the 15 years. And so that will align with the Waterfront Master Plan over 30 years if we continue at that same rate. So that 2017 effect is $1 million for that. The 15-year capital plans and funding models are in the binders. And I probably can take this opportunity just to add my 2 cents in terms of 15 years versus farther on. I think I can tell you certainly sitting around the treasurer's table in Toronto, there's not too many that go much more than 15 years, even some of the larger municipalities. They do go a little farther, and so do we in some instances. Certainly some of our debt models go out farther. They go out to when the debt expires. But the challenge is, and you can even see it within the 15 years, the challenge is you go much farther than that, you tend to be building in an awful lot of assumptions. And you can almost build an Excel formula in and just keep going because it's all based on assumptions as opposed to actual facts that we know. So, and we can see that even doing 15 years. I can tell you as departments bring numbers in, the first 5 years is pretty much bang on. 5 to 10, we got something in there, but it's a little estimate. 10 to 15, we're quite often the analysts are going back to the departments and saying, no, you know you're going to spend something in there, and we're building that up. So you can see as you go farther out, it definitely is more of a challenge. And then, as I said, the issuance of long-term debt, not required for the 2017 capital budget. And we continue to remain within our debt ceiling until 2019, which was reported to Council earlier this year in terms of our debt balances. We do keep a very close eye on the Standard & Poor's key indicators, key performance indicators, and the numbers that they look at, particularly with respect to our capital spending. They look at a couple of things. They look at our total overall debt limit. And you'll remember the debt graph, which is my last slide coming up, that shows where we are and how we try to issue debt and the timing of the debt to stay within those particular limits. They look at making sure that we're below about 120% of our consolidated operating revenues. And our consolidated operating revenues includes the utilities because the utility debt is in ours. So that's around $400 million, give or take, and so as long as we're under the $500 million. And as you'll see in a minute, and what we had last year, we do go up over that because of particularly for the sewer plant and some of the debt that we will be issuing. So by 2019, 2020, we're up over. Standard & Poor's is very well aware of that and have recognized that's a result of a couple of one-time projects, and we do start to come back down. So a total projected balance by the end of 18 of $538 million. So that's total debt just based on if everything was issued, everything that's been approved was issued by then. But as you'll recall, we do try to manage that in terms of the actual timing of when we issue the debt. And so you'll see here in terms of our debt picture, and if you look at last year's, if you went back to last year's budget report and compared this, everything has shifted out a year. And the advantage of that is because we've shifted a year because we have no debt being approved for 2017. So everything shifts out, but you'll see the green line, which is kind of our treasurer recommended, but also follows what Standard & Poor's recommends, continues to go up. So we had 0 issuance for 17, but that line has gone up by 2%. And so the more we can shift out, the better we are in terms of keeping under that line. So this picture actually looks better this year than it did a year ago. And we'll hopefully see the benefit of that next year with our review by Standard & Poor's, because they're usually 1 year behind. We provide them with last year's forecast because nothing's been approved. But you can see that except for that 3-year period where we're slightly over the line, then we're starting to come back down. And certainly as we get farther out, we're seeing less reliance on debt because we're using more pay-as-you-go with the reserve funds. And that reflects the 1% capital as well. It's in there. And that's my presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. All right, any questions? Deputy Mayor Bone.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I was just curious if we've had any luck in talks with the payment in lieu of and trying to get the heads and beds taxes, or if there's anything there, any movement there, or are we kind of looking at the status quo there?
So to my knowledge, from the political side, I don't think there's been much in terms of the heads and beds. We are continuing to work with the federal government and MPAC on the payments in lieu side. We still have quite a gap between what's in the assessment roll that MPAC has assessed and what the federal government is paying. And so that's been a bit of a challenge, but we've started the last couple years meeting with both groups. We tried to bring both groups to the table. That was a little bit of a feat that it didn't pan out very well. So now we're kind of working with them one at a time, but we're trying to encourage them to get together, compare methodologies, try to get some consistency and lessen that gap, because for us it's always a little bit of an unknown as to what's coming. And we're getting there. We've been able to identify some of the discrepancies in the methodologies, and so we're getting there. I'm not sure we'll ever get it eliminated completely, but we're getting a better handle internally on those. And I can tell you, I don't think there's a lot of payment in lieu money on the table there. I think it's just methodology differences at the end of the day.
So some positive progress then.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Councillor Neal.
Yes. So we are totally funding our capital out of our own 1% capital levy funds that we raise. Is that accurate?
That's correct for 2017, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess my concern is, and perhaps you can speak to this, are we fully utilizing the low interest rates that are available through Infrastructure Ontario? And why wouldn't we more aggressively, if you will, utilize those funds for things like transit enhancement and affordable housing, which are priorities that we've established for ourselves? Perhaps you can speak to that.
Sure. So a couple things to that. First of all, in terms of going back to some of our debt levels, we need to be careful. If we start going up over that $500 million mark, it's going to affect our credit rating and affect some of our rates and some of our terms with Infrastructure Ontario. So from a pure, if we start to increase those debt balances, that's going to be a risk for sure. The other side of it is if we borrow the money, and if we borrow it early, then we got to start paying it back. And the debt payments come out of those same capital reserve funds. So it's a little bit of a balance when we're trying to do the recommended funding as to how much do we take out directly or then if we borrow, it's still going to come out, it's just coming out over time. And so again, that draws down those same capital reserve funds.
Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, and I apologize ahead of time for not sending you these in advance, but if I may just check on page 2 out of 30, it talks about non-tax revenue of $127 million, and comparing that with last year, that seems to be a difference of 2.9 million. So is it possible to say that we found 2.9 million more in non-tax revenue?
Let me just get that one in front of me.
Assuming my arithmetic is correct.
Yeah, so we would have, in terms of non-tax, so our, I think just going back to that revenue slide, if I can get back to that. That one there. So our non-tax revenues would include the government grants and the fees and charges. Those would be the two main things in there. So fees and charges, we have the fees and charges bylaw that basically says we need to put our fees up by 2% or by inflation, plus 1% for the capital. So the capital component as well would go into that, just like it does in the tax side. So that's probably 2 to 2.5%, but then, so that would be increased up. That $50 million would be going up. But then we only went up by 1.7 because of some of the challenges. So that would be part of it. The government grants went up about 2.2, which is kind of what we would hope for. And so that also has increased it. So that would all be in that component as well.
Wonderful. And if I recall from previous years, it had been mentioned a few times that $2 million is equivalent to about a 1% tax increase. Is that still correct in this year?
That's correct.
Wonderful. And the other thing you had mentioned was that you had that TD dinner on Friday, and on Saturday in the Globe and Mail, 2 articles came out talking about how Trump's effect will be to increase inflation. And I'm wondering if there is I guess, a stress test for our finances. If inflation goes too high, at what point does our budget break? And or if if interest rates go up to counter that, do we have any stress tests like that or anything close to that?
We don't have anything specifically, but I mean, I can tell you certainly for the majority of our materials and supplies, our contracted services costs, there's not a lot of cushion in there. So if things did start to go up, certainly our materials, services, rents, all those categories are all pretty much flatlined from 16 to 17. So there's not a lot there if all of a sudden our inflation went up. But I can certainly tell you from the experts that we're talking on Friday, they're not expecting that, they are expecting that south of the border, that they'll start to see some inflation as some of that infrastructure spending happens and tax cuts happen. They're not expecting that necessarily to be a direct effect over to us in the shorter term. So I would say certainly in the next year, we're going to have to keep a close eye on it to see. I'm hoping it won't affect 17. It could potentially affect some of our forecasts for 18.
Okay, and do you have any comments on Peter Kirkham's article in The Whig recently where he's talking about negative multipliers for infrastructure spending here in Canada?
I have not read that article.
Okay, no worries.
Did it come out during budget time?
Okay. And And if I may ask also about the capital plans again, they reflect, and this is on page 18 out of 30, in the paragraph that starts capital plans. Capital plans include project estimates for a variety of capital works spanning the scope of municipal operations. And it talks about how we incur annual maintenance and rehabilitation expenses. And it sounds like we're moving money, or I should say the capital, what is considered capital, may seem to have changed compared to an earlier conversation we had just about 2 years ago. It seems now that asset management is considered capital, so like road reconstruction, moving money, say, from new road construction to road reconstruction seems to be easier based on this. Am I misreading that?
So that's a good question. So there's 2 ways to define the capital. So the answer to your question is yes. So there are what we call capital maintenance costs that are in the capital budget. So if we have to replace a roof, that's a capital maintenance cost. If we got somebody painting the roof, that's in operating and that's a maintenance. For us, it defines how things get funded. So we would not fund the replacement of a roof from our operating budget. We would fund it from our capital reserve funds. That's a little different from accounting practices in terms of how you define capital. So if you're just replacing a roof that normally has a 40-year life, but you got to replace it at 20 years to get that 40-year life, that's not considered capital under accounting standards. But for us and in the municipal world, that quite often is included in capital because, again, you don't want your operating budgets to be going up and down with these capital maintenance costs. What we consider regular maintenance, where we have to paint the roof or paint the walls or that kind of thing, that's all in the operating budget. So we try to make a distinction there. The other thing is it has to be more than $10,000, I think, is the cost before it will be. If it's under 10, it goes into our operating budget automatically. So we have a threshold for that.
Okay, thank you.
And sorry, Councillor, that hasn't changed. That's been the same policy for a number of years now, so that hasn't changed over the last year.
Okay. And may I ask, one page back on 17 out of 30, it says financial plans included in this budget reflect continuation of the 1% policy until 2024. So that's 8 more years or so. If we were to build a third crossing, that would be an asset that would be, I assume, has to be considered in that. Would that extend that 1% or would that reduce it, or how would that affect that in your opinion?
It hasn't been built into the models obviously yet because we don't go that far out, but certainly on the horizon that we've done, so say the 15 or even to 20-year horizon, we're saying based on the assets that we have today, we're hoping by 2024 to have it stopped or start to wean us off of it or whatever the transition will be at that point in time. So if we add new assets into the pool of our assets, that potentially could put it forward.
Sayo Hunt.
So with respect, just to add to that, with respect to the third crossing, that is built into the model. So it is within the structure and it is within the contemplated debt over the 10 years, including the allocation to 2024.
And only to 10 years then? Sorry?
I'm sorry?
Did you say only to 10 years?
So Sayo Hunt said that the third crossing is already built into the forecast out to 2024. Is that correct?
In the capital plan for 15-year horizon, the third crossing and the costs for the third crossing is contemplated and built into that plan. That is also included in the graphs for the debt, and with the continued 1% through to 2024, that financing allows for that project to proceed within everything that's within the 15-year models and what's contemplated here in the debt levels.
Thank you. One more. And my last question has got to do with no issuance of debt this year. So I take it that the debt for the airport was issued before this year or before 2017, or where does that debt come in?
Not issued, but approved. So any debt that council has approved up until the end of the 2016 budget, plus I don't think there was anything since the 2016 budget, it's approved, just not yet issued. There's the slide there. So you can see at December 15th, we had about $280 million of debt that's been approved, so the airport would be in there, but not issued because we haven't spent the money yet.
Councillor Stroud.
Thank you. I only have one question. I'm hoping the answer is simple. I tried to find it in the body of the report, but I couldn't. It referenced the second page of Exhibit A, so the budget lines, and it comes back in various spreadsheets by department. And I don't know if maybe this is premature or maybe there'll be a presentation about it, but in the in Exhibit A on the second page, there are a couple budget lines where there's significant negative differences between 2016 and 2017. In other words, significantly less costs. And I'm not going to ask about the one in housing and social services because we're probably going to hear about that. But I'm asking about the one under finance, technology, administration, mayor, council, and CAO. There's a 273,000 budget reduction, or 14% budget reduction for 2017 over 2016, and it shows up as a 265,000, exactly 265,000 difference between 2016 actual and 2016 approved budget. And I'm wondering if there's an easy answer for that.
So the easy answer is I cut the council budget out. No, sorry. Bad sense of humor. It's been a long couple weeks. The reduction there is reflecting the reorganization that the CAO did a few months ago, and so we've removed one commissioner and commissioner's office and reallocated that work accordingly. So that's reflected in there as a reduction.
That would have been my guess, but thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you very much. And we will move on to number 8. We have 2 department presentations on tap this evening. First, we have Transportation and Infrastructure Services, and again, invite Mr. Keach.
Thank you, Your Worship. So for the Transportation and Infrastructure Services budget, I wanted to start off by talking about the org change, and it's interesting. It's a little bit of a follow-up to the question I think that was just asked that has impacted, I guess, what we were calling the Public Works Services Department last year. And just make sure that that council is aware of the change and how that impacts the budget and the work that we do. So the circles that we've shown here, the Public Works Services Group is basically what existed up until about the midpoint of this year, and then with the addition of the transportation services, it has formed the Transportation and Infrastructure Services Group. And again, I'm probably just touching on things that everybody is well aware of, but I think it's important before we get into the budget that there's no misconceptions of this. So the new group, as it stands now, has the engineering group as it did before, public works as it did before, and solid waste as it did before. Adding into that is transit services with the transit division, parking, and fleet. And that completes the Transportation and Infrastructure Services Group. And if you read through the overview of in your budget binders regarding the Transportation Infrastructure Services, we talked a little bit about I think what this means, sort of bring the two groups together. And I think it was a very good strategic move that the CAO did in forming this new department. And from our perspective, and we wrote in the overview that we were very excited about the change, and that is very true. I think bringing the groups together presents a number of opportunities, not just for the group, but for the municipality as a whole. And we've talked about on this slide, bringing together a fully integrated transportation systems organization. And in the overview, there were a number of circles, and there was kind of a continuum of arrows through the circles. That existed before, that was in there last year, but I think adding the transit, along with parking and fleet, really completes it. So, and I'm going to walk through this because I think it's quite important that council realizes the value of this group and the value of the change. So, what it does is it allows us to look at policy development and research, to take that through to infrastructure planning and design, then construction, management and operations, and maintenance. So I'm kind of reading what was there. I just want to talk a little bit about this. So if we, look at something like the active transportation study that is currently going on, and look at that as the policy development and research. So you now have the engineering group that does a lot of the design work, the transit group that has a fairly significant role in that, the public works services, so Damon's area that's responsible for the maintenance and whatnot. And I think a key component that sometimes people don't really see how it fits in, but also solid waste under Heather. And bringing all these together really does create a number of opportunities when you're doing the work to come up with the policy, the research, and then taking that forward, into the design, as it says, the construction. You've got all the different groups involved in the management operation, the maintenance, and then to kind of go full circle, down the road when you start these studies again, it really does complete it. And as I said, we're excited about this. We think it creates a number of opportunities, and we think it helps us in the transportation and infrastructure services to better deliver on council priorities. So that was just a little bit of a preamble before we get into the budget. But I think it's important that council and the public realize. So as I did with the UK one of the things I want to focus on is how we are helping council achieve the priorities that it set out in the strategic plan. And I'm going to go through these actually twice for some of them, and I know it will be a little bit repetitive, but I'm doing it from the department as a whole initially, because again, I think it's important to realize how the different groups interact. And then as I go into each division, I'll again talk about them fairly quickly, separately in the division. So you can see here the 4 areas that there are some specific projects that we will be working on. And to go through each area in a little bit of detail, invest in infrastructure. As I said with the UK one, this really is a lot of what we do. There are some key projects that we obviously will be focusing on. The third crossing, as per council's direction, making it shovel ready by the end of this term of council. Advanced integrated multimodal and active transportation services plan system that I just talked about. Maintaining, improving roadway, sidewalks, paths, and network. And again, I think this is key, the network part of it, looking at things as to how we can help other groups and things such as the K&P Trail, bike networks, those types of things. Another key project, complete the John Cullinter Boulevard project. So this is the work that went on over the past summer with the preloading for the bridge by the VIA station that is basically settling now. A number of lifts to go on that over the next couple of years, and some road work, and then finally the structure that will be built in a couple of years. Another key project from your strategic plan. Continue to support the current infrastructure plan and recommend continued support of future plans to council. Exact same wording that I had in the Utilities Kingston budget. And again, I think they're, not just the integration of the groups I talked about here, but also bringing Utilities Kingston in to work in managing the infrastructure for you in a very, very coordinated fashion. And a couple of other projects, the Hanson and the Chown Garage Rehabilitation Program, all projects that the T&I Services Group are working on towards the Invest in Infrastructure part of your strategic plan. The other area, plan a livable city, foster intensification in the city core. Again, talked about at the Utilities Kingston presentation, but key here in this group, again, looking at projects such as Princess Street, the one that was just completed, looking forward to the next one in 2018 to allow intensification building. Also, not just in the Princess Street area, but looking at a number of other projects around the city. And again, I go back to talking about the value of having these groups together. So not just looking at, the hard infrastructure of building roads, sewers, whatnot, but also, the policy side of it, bringing in parking and transportation as well in a more coordinated fashion to support this. And, some of the work that we are doing to expand and improve public transit that also works towards the goal of intensification and planning. And I think a key word here is planning a livable city. Green the City, couple of projects here, more in the public works side of the department. The Emerald Ash Borer continue on with the cost mitigation work that we have done there over the next few years. Double the tree canopy. There was a report that was presented to council back this summer that looked at actions that we can take, not just the municipality, but also in partnering with some other groups in the city to make that a reality by 2025, continuing to work on that plan and bringing forward updates to council in 2017. And another area that became key in this past summer, the tree watering program. We had some of the things in place. I think this was a good year where we were able to act on some of that, and it was a bit of a learning experience as well, looking at a very dry summer and having, I think, a relatively successful tree watering program. Another area in Green the City is enhance waste management and recycling opportunities to promote a litter-free city. And again, I want to go back to the integration because I do think it's very important. And I think, sometimes the view is departments get put together, they're under one commissioner, and that's the extent of it. But there are a lot of ways that we can work together on this. So looking at solid waste, how they can work with public works and the downtown area to reduce litter, and also with transit. One of the first meetings that we had with the group together is looking at how for bus stops we can make sure that the proper receptacles are in the proper place to achieve this goal. Things that you think would be simple and sometimes get missed, and I think there's opportunities for us to improve on this. Foster open government. The one that we had here is customer service excellence. Everything that we do in this group does touch the customer one way or another. It is a very large operational perspective, be it winter control, which I think people are well aware of today, collecting garbage, some of the work that we do on sports fields, transit operations, parking operations, huge impact on the customer. And this is an area, again, that we hope to improve on over time. Before I kind of move off the integration aspect, as I said, we are excited about this. We have obviously had a number of months to work together, and it is our goal over the remainder of this year and going into next year with the four different groups together to look at ways that not only we can achieve or help you achieve your priorities, things such as customer service, but also look at ways that we can be more efficient in years to come. So, are there ways that we can possibly do things that will assist in reducing the tax base to, make room for expanding transit services and things such as that? So, an area that we do plan on looking on over the next 6 months. So looking at the numbers, the operating budgets for 2016, 2017, you can see here a total of just over just under $48 million, an increase of close to $2 million. The overall increase is about 4%, but again, the vast majority of that is with transportation services, increase in service there. And some of that is not just added service for 2017, but the fact that there were services in 2016 that we put in place mid-year that will have to be annualized their cost over the total of 2017. The other areas, as you can see, are below the 2% level that we try to target for operating budgets. So with bringing the transit, parking, and fleet into this group, there are some things that are a little bit different. You'll see that a little bit going through the presentation. We do have approval for all the capital expenditures in the engineering, public works, solid waste group for the 4 years of this term of council, the same as I talked about at Utilities Kingston. We presented a 4-year budget back at the start of your term that was approved. We're not currently looking for any changes to that, and as I said, it's important for us to try to work within that, unless there are factors that will cause pressures that we weren't expecting at the time that we would have to come forward and look for approval. So this just gives you, again, a reminder of what was approved for capital in 2017 and 2018 in those three departments. For the transportation group, did not have the 4-year budget approved. So in 2017 capital, we are looking for additional approvals for transit fleet parking, a total of just under $13 million, as you can see there. And I'll touch on those in a little more detail in a few minutes. So looking at each department individually, as I said, a little bit of this is repetitive, so I will go through it fairly quickly. And what I've tried to do in some of the areas is, again, go back to the strategic plan, because that really does set the direction the council provided for the departments over the course of your term, and we try very much to take that into account when we set up not just our budgets but our work plans for the year. So in the engineering group and the invest in infrastructure, again, looking at the roads and sidewalks, the key project for 2017 is the Division Street reconstruction. We are well down the road for the planning process for that. We had a fairly major meeting with Queens last week to talk about this, the impact on them. We've also met with the BIA, because it's not necessarily a Princess Street project, but it will undoubtedly have an impact on that. So planning well along the way for that. A number of sidewalk reconstruction programs and just general road repair programs also planned. The active transportation master plan, continue work on that in 17. We'll complete the or work towards completing the construction on the John Counter Boulevard project, as I mentioned earlier. And the third crossing project, working towards making it shovel ready. In 2017, completion of the preliminary design work, which is well underway. Completion of the business plan, and also a cost-benefit analysis is underway, which will be completed over the course of 17. And then plan a livable city, as I mentioned earlier, the work on intensification. Again, this work, not just the groups, the 4 groups involved in the T&I group, but also Utilities Kingston, and working very, very closely with the planning department in that regard. For the Public Works group, continued focus on cleanliness and maintenance of the of downtown to support the capital improvements that are underway. And we are focusing on the downtown, but not just the downtown. Really, this is a citywide initiative. Increased focus on sports fields and park maintenance, including some minor capital improvements. This is an area that we did focus on over the course of 2017. And the last one, winter maintenance as well. I think we've made some improvements. I think we can still continue to make improvements in that area, but it is a key area for the Public Works group. And the tree canopy, as mentioned earlier, the report that was presented to council back last summer, working towards the outcomes of that, not just in 17, but for many years to come. In solid waste, a number of activities that we are working at. Some I would just class as general activity, general annual activities. The waste recycling strategies, identifying core objectives, initiatives to increase waste diversion. Again, looking to meet the goal of council to get our diversion levels to the target that was set. Audits that continue on a yearly basis, and then promoting a waste app that has been developed. One of the things that we need to do in 2017 is look back at a study that was done in 2015 in regards to the material recovery facility that we operate. Could it become a regional facility? And then tying that into some legislative changes that are happening in a report that Heather made at EITP, looking at the results of that, looking at the results of the study, coming forward to committee early in the new year and to council with a bit of a strategy, a longer-term strategy as to where we see recycling going with changes from the province and the possibility of a regional facility. One of the changes that has been made is a dedicated multi-residential recycling route, so a recycling vehicle that just does multi-residential, trying to increase the diversion from these types of properties, and not just with the vehicle, but also the education for people in these types of residents, trying to get them more on board with recycling. And then, a number of other events there just to try to increase awareness. including one that I think is key, and that's, really looking at ourselves, the municipality. I think we have done good work over a number of years to try and increase the diversion from public. I'm not so sure we've done necessarily so good with the city, and I'm talking, city buildings, city employees, and I'll put Utilities Kingston in there as well. And that's one of the things that Heather has undertaken. And one of the things I want to note with the solid waste, I go back to the comment I made about customer service and, how each group actually touches very closely on the customer. I think that is definitely true for solid waste. I think that's something that we forget sometimes. And there are a number of programs here to, get the customer more involved, get them more educated, and at the end to try and work towards the diversion rate the council, the targets that council has set for us by that means. So moving on to parking, again, looking at a number of council priorities and in some of the actions proposed by staff to meet these. So invest in infrastructure, looking at public parking solutions for the replacement of parking that may be lost in the downtown core. And, the highlights, in addition to looking for possibly new solutions or building solutions, making sure that the assets that we have, particularly the garages, are well maintained, putting into practice good asset management principles in the garages. A lot of work has been done, I think, over the last few years and continuing to do that in the upcoming years. In Green the City, on-street parking programs in high-demand areas, and then plan a livable city parking policies to support intensification, parking ratios, cash in lieu, particularly the Williamsview area. And I put them together to kind of look at some of the highlights. There has been a plan that was brought forward to committee and council looking at new charges for parking and a fine review. That has been approved, but now there is a lot of work, a considerable amount of work to implement that, and that was something that will take place over 17. We're going to work with planning on the cash in lieu policies. And then looking at, some of the neighborhoods where, commuter parking is putting pressure on residential parking and dealing with them on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, to help achieve, again, the goal of plan a livable city and, support intensification without causing some of the hardships for parking for people that live there. The parking budget does net out to zero, as indicated. From a capital perspective, some of the work's in process. I touched on some of these, some of the work that is being done on the Chow and Hanson garage. Also, there is money, and there was a report that was brought forward to council dealing with possibly a new parking structure that has been deferred for the time being. In addition to the maintenance work, there are some safety programs that we are looking at implementing. I talk about technology here. The technology also follows through to all the different types of parking and also the buses, transit as well. It's an area that we are focusing on to see what we can do, again, to provide better customer service, to promote safety of our employees, particularly the bus drivers, and also provide information back to council, because I know when we did the presentation on parking rates, looking at that, there was a request from council. Is it possible to gather more information on utilization of spaces before we do a study like that again? That is something that we heard and something that we are looking at implementing over the next number of years. For capital replacements, we talked about work in process on some of the garages, also looking at some of the surface lots and some maintenance programs, some significant maintenance programs on those. Fleet, Green the City, one of the items that we continue to look at there, are there more fuel efficient vehicles available for utilities vehicles, public works vehicles, buses, really all the municipal vehicles continue to work towards that. Less consumption, better fuel, look at things such as electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, those types of things as well. Some of the highlights here, obviously, is in supporting the increase in transit services, and I'll talk a little bit about that. later on from the purchases for buses and whatnot, but fleet is heavily involved in that. Ms. Kennedy talked about fuel prices, working in that regard to maintain a balance with the fuel prices and trying to manage the fluctuation in the prices. Incorporating B20 diesel fuel into the transit fuel to help reduce the GHG, working towards green the city and sustainable Kingston plans. And so you had, all the costs for here are transferred out to other departments, so it nets out to zero, as you can see. Work in process, a number of vehicles that either have been purchased and we're waiting on delivery or waiting to purchase in this year. 2017 capital, there is some work planned on the transit garage, some equipment improvements there to the hoist. And the rest of these are just vehicles, basically the day-to-day business between Public Works, Fleet, and other departments within the city. It's just ongoing capital replacements of these vehicles. So the last part of the presentation actually does deal with transit, and we purposely put this to the end because we felt that there would probably be some questions in that regard. So the council priorities, plan a livable city, expand and improve public transit, some of the things that we have done in that regard. We are doing, implement the fare changes that were talked about at a recent council meeting, expand the youth fare category and greater subsidies for low-income riders. Also looking at expanding the hours of operation on Sundays and holidays, and that is included in the budget for 2017. And my last slide looks a little bit more at this, but you know, the plan that was presented to council did deal with the Montreal Street Express. There has been a lot of questions in that regard, and it is still planned in 2018. Some of the highlights here talked about the revenues. You're looking at increasing these based on ridership growth and proposed fare changes. And you know, Sheila talked about some of the numbers when the presentation was done, the increase in ridership, and I think it has been just phenomenal, the success to this point that the transit group has achieved. Looking to increase the use of employer TransPass program. I know that is an area that they are focusing on. You know, trying to get the employer and the employees on board with this program. Continuing the grade 9 to 12 program, and also increase in Queens and St. Lawrence universal contracts. So from a budget perspective, the variance here, and I'm just going to focus on the variance, is approximately $1.4 million. I'm going to talk just a bit about that. The works in process, there are some bus acquisitions. The buses have been ordered and waiting for delivery on them. And there's some work on bus stops and shelters that is ongoing and will continue on. The variance, as I noted, 1.4 million. 1 million is an increase to the Transit Reserve Fund, of which 900,000 is a one-time increase to fund new buses and support federal grant applications. So initial 900,000 being put in the reserve fund. Basically what it's giving us is 50-cent dollars with the money from the federal government that comes in to purchase buses to implement programs such as the Montreal Street Transit Expansion Program. And the balance goes towards salaries, wages, and benefits not covered off by additional revenue. So for 2017, the capital of $7.8 million, bus acquisition, 7 new buses to implement the transit plan. And as was pointed out when the plan was presented to council, buses, it does take a long time to order, and you know, with some of the federal funding, there is concern about the timeliness of this, so you don't just place an order for a bus or go to a parking lot and drive a bus away. It's something that needs to be planned out and ordered ahead of time. The downtown transfer point, the EA has been completed. We are looking at starting construction on that. In 2017, we will do the planning, possibly get the contracts and the tender ready so that we can start construction on parts of it in 2018. And again, I'm going to go back to the value of having these groups together. You know, in 2018, I talked about the Princess Street reconstruction project, again, a fairly significant one. This could be a fairly significant one, and the timing of these together is extremely important to the BIA, and that is something that we are taking into account. And then just ongoing work with bus stop shelters and the technology that I talked about earlier. So the last two slides in the presentation, what we tried to do is just focus on some of the highlights from the transit plan. And what it does is look back at the plan that was presented to council back some time ago. And for 2017, what we are looking at, and it is the same as was presented to council back some time ago, expand the hours of operation Sundays and holidays, and on some routes it is starting at 2 hours earlier and going 3 hours later in the day. It is annualizing the increase in service that took place in 2016. I think it was implemented about September of 16. You will now have the full cost of that for 2017, so that is built in 2017. As noted earlier, greater support for low-income riders, children, and youth ages 19 to 24. Again, council has seen that. And moderate increases to other fare categories. Going beyond 2017, so the plan that was presented to council was a 5-year plan. I believe it went from 2017 to 2021. This looks at from 2018 to 2020. And what is still in the budget is pretty much the same as what was presented to council when the transit plan was presented back a few weeks ago. So in 2018, we will introduce express service on the Montreal Street corridor as planned. That has not been changed. Increased frequency during peak on the 600 Express Series. That's the Express Series in the east part of the city. So that's still planned for 2018. 2019, increased peak frequency on the 500 Express service in the west portion of the city, again, as was presented. And in 2020, extend the new Montreal Street one route express to serve St. Lawrence College, the new Providence Care Hospital, and Kingston Center. So again, the plan is still the same. And I'm not going to touch on this, but I'm just going to reflect back to, as Ms. Kennedy and as I believe Mr. Hunt indicated, for 18, 19, and 20, there is a good portion of this and the overall budget that is not funded. But what is in our plan still is as what was presented to council at that time. So that's the extent of the presentation. If there's any questions, we will answer them.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Neal.
Yes. Just wanted to confirm, I want to thank Ms. Kidd for responding to some emails I sent today. I was very ambitious and optimistic about being able to roll out the Montreal Street one potentially 6 months earlier. As I understand it, and you can elaborate if you would, that's dependent on us receiving the necessary new buses within the fleet in order to accommodate even a May 2018 rollout. Is that accurate?
Through you, Your Worship, that is accurate. So we typically like to allow 12 months from the time that a bus is ordered until it's delivered. So it's that amount of time that we have to concern ourselves with, but there are other operational factors. We need to continue hiring and training bus operators, and we will do that over the course of time between now and getting ready for May 2018. We have some infrastructure work that would need to be done to be ready, including bus stop upgrades along the express stops where we'll put them. And then we have the detailed planning. Right now, the planning is at a fairly high level. We haven't identified the exact location of bus stops. So there's still a fairly significant amount of work that needs to be done before we can implement the Montreal Street Express. And last but not least, our bus operator schedules are fairly complex, and we do 3 schedules a year. And so we often will always time any major changes to the schedule. So our schedules run January through the end of April. May through the end of August is a different type of schedule for us because we don't have Queen's service on the ground. And then we start again for September through to the end of the year. So we coincide any major changes with those timelines. We always try to avoid January because that's not a good time to implement. So you'll usually see when we're proposing changes, it'll always come forward for a May or a September timeline.
Thank you very much. My other question is in regards to doing a kind of general greening of our fleet. I know that cap and trade is definitely encouraging more greater efficiency, and I know that there are a number of car manufacturers who have 2020 rollout dates for electric cars with much greater range than the electric cars currently have. Can we look forward to a greening of our fleet gradually through the coming years and taking advantage of both hybrids, the improved hybrids and the improved electric vehicles?
I think, and Sheila may want to add to that, I think the quick answer to that is yes. I know we have a couple of electric vehicles, and we've experimented at Utilities Kingston with one hybrid vehicle. I think some of the technologies still need to improve a little, but if you look forward, 2020 and beyond, it's a definite yes. I think the technology is changing.
And I know that there are, and we have one frequent emailer who keeps pointing out that there are transit electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles available as well. Have we explored those, or are they at all feasible?
Through you, Your Worship, we have explored them, and I would say that for us, they're not feasible at this time. Kingston Transit is a member of a Canadian urban transit research project that's exploring, primarily supposed to be exploring all alternate fuels, but they seem to be more focused on fully electric buses. We are looking at that. The cost of an electric bus is almost double the cost by the time you factor in the additional upfront costs plus the additional costs associated with maintenance along the way. So at this point, we don't see it. And from an operational perspective, we're also not seeing yet a bus that would be able to serve on any of the routes because of the battery life and those types of things. So we do continue to monitor that, and we will continue. At this time, we don't see it in the near future.
If I could add to that,
Thank you.
At Kingston Hydro, we did purchase a hybrid bucket truck. Kingston Hydro is in the electric business, and we thought if anywhere in the family of companies that we should have one there. If I could roll the clock back, we would not have bought it. I think the technology is not at the point where it's really that viable. As I said, I think it will change, but with the larger vehicles, I think it still needs a bit of work.
Thank you.
Councillor Schell.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Reading about Green the City, I was really pleased to see that for our new trail, the Kick and Push Trail, it's going to include winter maintenance. And I gather that's a brand new item for us to have an interior trail that's going to have winter maintenance. So I'd like to say thank you, and I presume you will be monitoring the costs of that so that later on we might expand that program.
Through you, Your Worship. Actually, we have sort of worked into that, our budget, the costs, anticipated cost for that urban portion of the trail already. We will definitely monitor those costs. One of the key factors to being able to maintain it through the winter is if it's a paved surface. With just a gravel surface, if we were to try to plow a surface like that on, say, a day like today where there's no frost in the ground, we'd end up just plowing gravel into the off the surface of the trail, and then we'd have a lot of repair work to do in the spring. So key to being able to expand that would be to have a paved surface on the trail.
That's great, thank you. And I did have one other question about bridge maintenance. It's under engineering's operating budget, and bridge maintenance is $66,244. And I suspect there's bridge maintenance elsewhere, but I just wondered why that one small amount is in the budget when we have a lot of bridges.
Through your worship, I'd first like to point out that the expenditures for bridges go beyond just the maintenance dollars, and a large part of those are captured within the capital budget for larger maintenance repairs. The 60-some-odd thousand dollars that we have in the operating budget is largely devoted towards joint cleanouts for some of the bridges, the expansion joints, which can invariably trap a fair bit of debris over the course of the year. So that's where those monies are largely targeted for under the operating. But again, most of the dollars are captured through our capital expenditures.
That's great, thank you. I suspected that. Thank you.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, I just have a question about solid waste diversion. The 3-year waste recycling strategy, are there plans for recycling containers in parks or transit stops in the near term? It's seeing as how transit and public works are working together these days.
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, so in a recent council update, we provided that 3 locations are currently being piloted with a garbage can and a recycling depot. The recycling depot style is similar to what you see downtown. So right now what we're undertaking is a corporate waste audit, and we're working on a corporate waste reduction and diversion plan. And that doesn't just include city buildings, it includes city spaces that we're responsible for. So parks, public spaces, transit stops. But before we just go ahead and start implementing pieces of that across the city, we want to look at what the behaviors currently are and what we currently have in place and make those decisions later on. And that work will happen. The audits are occurring over the next couple of weeks, and then the study will continue into 2017. So yes, we are looking at those.
Great, thanks. And so the end date of the pilot project then is at the end of 2017?
Yes. So the containers that have been placed at those transit stops now will be audited over the next couple of weeks, and then we're going to work on strategies to increase that and what is the best solution for that kind of public space. And then we'll be doing a follow-up audit in 2017. So just kind of wanting to measure what we've done over the year, and then after that, they will likely be removed and new solutions put in place, or new receptacles, more permanent, that fit that location best.
Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you, Your Worship. On that same file, we know we got a briefing, which Mr. Keach mentioned, on the new Waste Diversion Act. And I wondered if we had any update on that, because it seems to me that while we're waiting for that, I would call particularly abstract and vague piece of legislation to make manufacturers and the like responsible for their waste. I'm just wondering if we've got any news on how long that's going to take, and if about what some of the effects might be, because it seems to me it's sort of casting a pall on municipal initiatives while we wait to find out, what is our role going to be. So do we know more about what our role might be and what the schedule is and so on?
The Waste Free Ontario Act was passed in June of 2016. And now that the act has been passed, we know what the legislation framework is, but what we don't know is the regulations that are being produced from that legislation. So we are still monitoring that very closely. And the timeline for the transition period to occur is still looking like 3 to 5 years, but we don't have any more details yet on what all of that will mean for us. And as we develop those, we're going to share those.
So if I could just supplement. So Ms. Roberts and I actually have a meeting scheduled with the CAO very soon to kind of update him on where we think this is going. And then I would see coming back to committee with an update probably, I'd say early-ish in the new year. It is something that Ms. Roberts is following very, very closely. As you said, it's new, it's a bit confusing. We're trying to still figure out just how it's going to impact us, but it would be very much at the top of Heather's list of things to monitor, and we will be getting back to committee.
So we've got interim and slightly longer term waste diversion goals that we pass to council. Are we going to be able to make them if we can't know whether we're going to be able to be constructive in our own sphere?
I think the goals that council has set for diversion, I would say we can still work towards achieving that. It will mean sort of what happens with the product. Now, that being said, and I don't want to kind of presume things too much, but if this were to impact us to the point where we're not doing pickup, then I think we would have some concerns in that regard, but we don't necessarily see that happening at this point.
Thank you.
Councillor Stroud.
My question is about transit. Just to confirm, I think it's fairly clear in the wording in the report. This is on in the summary. Anyway, it's about the fare subsidies for low income, for students, youth, and for children. And it says the service changes, this is a quote, the service changes built into the 2017 budget include fare structure changes that provide a greater subsidy to low-income riders, 3-year pilot to support riders between 18 and 24 years of age by expanding the age category for Ruth, and free transit for children 12 and under. Are these changes, do they have a go-live date, and is it separate for the various changes, or is it combined?
Through you, Your Worship, the intent is that those fare changes would come into effect on the 1st of January.
So right after Christmas?
About 6 days.
That's usually what comes after Christmas is January.
No, it just seems like a Christmas present to some people. All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, just 2 questions. I'm going to take up the follow-up that our treasurer said. I'd like to know the difference between B20 and B5 biodiesel and why that's better and why that cost is better for our city to undertake.
Through you, Your Worship, I will do my best at this because the fleet manager isn't with us tonight. So the B20 blend, and we cannot run it year-round because cold weather doesn't pair with it very well. But it's a cleaner blend that burns cleaner and therefore produces less greenhouse gas emissions than the lower B5 blend. And I do know that it's not a food-based biodiesel, so it's more friendly to the environment and doesn't impact the food industry negatively.
Thank you. I would hope that the lower GHG cost products, at some point, we get rewarded financially for spending that extra money, either through cap and trade programs or whatever, because the incentives don't seem to be aligned when we're trying to do these things. I'll just leave that as a comment. And then my second question is on the budget for engineering. under by program. I'm just traffic management seems to be a pretty big deal in the city. We're undertaking traffic strategy, so there's a relatively significant reduction under that part, and I guess I just wanted to understand what that meant, how that translates into program. It goes from 496 to 415, a reduction of $80,000, and so I'm just wondering, are we planning to manage our traffic less and hope it all works out, or are we looking at, or are those savings realized somewhere else?
Through your worship, those were actually a reallocation of some staffing costs. We had a position that was assisting us with some of the additional work that was required to support the Bell fiber to the home work that was happening in the municipality. We now more appropriately covered some of those costs under our infrastructure division.
Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you very much. Thank you. And now we will move to our second departmental presentation. We have Commissioner Hurdle coming to speak about community services.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I know it's been already a long night, so we'll try to make this fairly easy for you. I have directors here with me tonight, Peter Yugenboss, Paige Agnew, Sheldon Laidman, Luke Falwell, Deb Skeef, and I'm looking for Colin Wigington, who's at the back and will take a seat. And they'll be helping me to answer any questions you might have. So a little bit to the point that Mr. Keach was making earlier in terms of the changes that have taken place this past summer in integration of services. What we've seen in community services is the addition of 2 departments, cultural services as well as real estate and environmental initiatives. And those have been quite beneficial in terms of creating a number of synergies. I'm not going to go through all of them tonight, and I will proceed with the actual presentation of the budget. But my presentation is structured in such a way that I want to emphasize some of the challenges, opportunities, and focus for 2017. So this is the operating budget that you have in front of you. It's slightly under 1%. For the overall group, and that's a little bit over or close to $38,700,000. In terms of tax contribution, the overall budget itself is about $120.5 million, and obviously the majority of the funding comes from other sources such as provincial, federal subsidy, as well as user fees. Just to add before I move on, you will notice that for the most part, departments are fairly stable. Where we're seeing a decrease is in housing and social services, and that's been pretty constant factors for the past number of years, which is related to the Ontario Works upload. So that continues again this year, and the last year is next year. So when you look at your longer term budget, you probably notice that housing and social services in 2019, we're seeing quite a difference there in terms of the operating budget, and that will be one of the challenges that we will have to focus on. So in terms of the capital budget, we have about $19.5 million that's proposed. Significant portion is in recreation and leisure services. That's related to asset management of a number of facilities, parks projects, trail projects. Most of councillors probably read the binder, which provides a list of the different projects and parks that are being proposed. We do also have significant amounts for real estate and environmental initiatives. Most of those funds are for the acquisition and preparation of employment lands, and I will talk a little bit more about that. And in housing and social services, we do have a significant amount of dollars that are actually, that's actually funding from the province. So it's flow-through money that is reflected in the capital budget. But we do have the $1 million that council has approved for the investment in affordable housing. So in terms of planning, building, licensing services, a couple of things that I want to focus on. The first one is the building services itself. So we have maintained the revenues at the same level. You've heard earlier that we've seen some decreases in the past few years in terms of residential growth, and that's had a significant impact in terms of building services. You probably recall that this particular service is fully financed by user fees, so we're not using any tax money to actually finance it. So when we're not getting the revenues in, we have to do a couple of things. And one that we've started to implement is a reduction in terms of our staffing. So we have already started to do that in 2016, both at the management and the frontline level. And we have also continued to draw from the Bragg Reserve Fund, which is a reserve fund that's created when we have surplus. We put from building services, we put the money in there, and then when we have shortfall, we take money from that reserve fund. The problem is we've been drawing a lot of money from the reserve fund, and we're getting to a point, obviously, where that's not going to be sustainable. If we keep going at the same rate, chances are we're not going to have any more money in the Bragg Reserve Fund, probably in about 2021 or 2022, which is not that far away. And should we ever get into a situation like that, we would have to make drastic cuts, which would mean obviously layoff of multiple staff, which is not where we want to go. So we are trying to address this issue quite gradually and work through it. We are hoping that we will see construction activity increase in the next year or two with a number of projects, as you know, in front of the Ontario Municipal Boards. But if we don't, we will need to continue to reduce our workforce that's associated with that service. In terms of bylaw property standards, we're continuing the downtown work that was initiated actually about 2 years ago. And we are proposing to introduce a new position, a bit as a pilot project like we did for downtown a couple of years ago, for the Williamsville and Sydenham areas specifically. And the reason for that is because those are two areas where we get quite a lot of complaints. And what we would like to do is we would like to have a resource that could try to address those in a more proactive way. So to have a staff that is a lot more present in those neighborhoods. So rather than waiting to get complaints, hopefully we can have a staff that is more present and try to address those before they come through either the councillors or directly to us. So we're trying to look at this in a proactive manner. Obviously, the partnership with AMS that we are working on and looking at implementing in 2017 to have, again, students more involved in terms of property standards and provide some support in that the area of Queen's University. And complete, of course, the review of building fees as well as expanding DASH for building services. The capital budget, we do have a number of things in works in progress. All of you are aware of the zoning bylaw review that is currently going on. We have the North Kingstown, of course, secondary plan and nodes and corridor study that are still part of the works in progress. As far as the 2017 request for capital, we have about 1.3 million, and that includes a number of things. One is the population model update. So although we haven't yet endorsed the updated official plan, we actually need to start all the work that needs to go into the next update that we have to do for the next 5 years. So that will be coming up, and the population model is usually one of the first review that we would do for the next update of the official plan. We have Clogs Road, Creekford secondary plan, and again, that's connected to employment land work that needs to take place. We do have funds to continue our work with the designation of heritage property. We have the dollars for the life cycle analysis study that was directed by council through a motion, and of course, some additional funding for DASH implementation. So for real estate and environmental initiatives, I just want to stress the importance and the focus that this particular department will have over the next year will be to get the employment land ready or acquire employment land that we need. Members of council are quite aware of a number of, obviously, deals that have been taking place in the past year. I know that Mr. Eugenboss can add to that, but I think that we've never seen anything like this in terms of precedent as far as the number of sales that have been taking place in our business parks, St. Lawrence Business Park and Cataraqui Business Park. So if we want to continue to be open for business, if we're serious about attracting businesses or enabling businesses to grow in our community, we need to make sure that we have that land ready. So that will be a major focus for this particular department over the next year. There will be some work in terms of review update to the brownfields program. There were some discussions earlier. Mr. Hunt commented on the financial implications. So we need to look at that, and we need to look at long-term sustainability. What we've been finding is that there's been a bit of an approach where we'll have applicants come in and wanting to add their property to the brownfields, even though they may not be within an area designated for brownfields, and we have typically supported those. But we need to take a look at that in terms of the financial sustainability. So that's part of the work that's happening now and will be brought back to council in 2017. Two other things in that particular department, the corporate climate action plan. So we will bring an update to council as well in 2017 as far as what the corporation has accomplished and what are the things that we are going to be working on from a corporate perspective, as well as the municipal energy plan. There has been quite a lot of work done on that one with key stakeholders. There have been some provincial legislative changes which has delayed some of the work around the municipal energy plan because we need to make sure that it does align with some of the provincial changes. But those two will be brought back to council in 2017. So in terms of capital budget, works in progress, a lot of dollars that are left for employment land servicing, John Counter Boulevard, obviously land acquisition because it's a major project that's being completed. We have some of the ongoing funds that we put in our budget for landfill work as well, but in this case we have Bell Park landfill channel stabilization that's in the works in progress. For 2017 capital budget, as I indicated earlier, the majority of the funds are for the acquisition preparation of employment land, and we do have funding, obviously, to continue to support some of the work for the Kingston East landfill closure and some of the brownfield remediation project. Housing and social services, couple of things. You're obviously all aware that 2018 is the last year of upload. 2019, we're starting to see a bit of an impact there because not only are we not benefiting from the upload anymore, but we are also continuing to see the decrease in federal subsidy as far as housing is concerned. So we have already started to discuss different ways that we could look at our 2019 budget there and maybe look at creative ways to try to address some of our financial challenges because we know that they're going to be significant in that particular area. We are proposing to continue the implementation of the 10-year housing and homelessness plan. Council did approve a report at the last council meeting, which included funding for home-based housing to provide day services at In From the Cold. Also included funding for 6 months at Ryandale. And yes, we are working very closely with Ryandale, so I want to reassure councillors that we are doing that. And they are looking at options. Actually, they've been quite proactive to look at potential options to use their property to fit within the plan for housing and homelessness. So they're very interested in continuing to support that, and that could come in various forms, and that's what we need to try to work through. But the first thing that we need to establish is a reduction in terms of shelter usage before we make recommendation to decrease the overflow shelter. There's funding as well for the Gathering Place in 2017. Again, that was part of the report at the last council meeting. Now, as you're all aware, the Gathering Place, most of its clientele is not necessarily homelessness clientele, but it's clientele that typically will be recipients of Ontario Works or ODSP. And we recognize that the meal service, it's a very important service. But we will be working with United Way in 2017 to establish a food security plan, which will look at all meal services across the community and also help to determine what's the best way to really provide service to the community, and are we maximizing all of our resources collectively. So that could very well have impacts in terms of our recommendations of future funding for the Gathering Place. We don't know that yet. The Universal Bus Pass Program, Council for Ontario Works recipients, Council approved that at the last meeting as well, so that's included in the budget. And one that we haven't talked a lot about yet, and that's probably because we don't have all the information yet, is the implementation of the Early Years Program. So this is actually a program that's being downloaded from the province. And as a service manager, we will now be responsible to oversee this program across not only the city, but the county as well. And in 2017, we will develop a plan that will look at how we're going to deliver this particular service, and we will obviously involve the key stakeholders. The key part that we don't know yet is how much money we're going to get from the province to deliver this program, which could have significant impact at the end of the day in terms of how, on our ability to deliver the program. And it could also have budget implications in the future that we're not yet aware of. So in terms of the capital budget, there are a number of things that are left in the works in progress. We do have money still for land acquisition disposition. We've mentioned that to council at one of the previous meetings not that long ago, that we haven't been spending that money as quickly as we have been for the capital investment because of a number of reasons. We do have the project for 35 Lion Street, which has been approved by council, but it's still underway, so there are still some funds remaining in the works in progress. And Shannon Park Residential Development Servicing is also in the works in progress. 2017 capital, as I indicated, most of funding is provincial funding flow through, and council's already approved actually 2 projects, 671 Brock Street for KFHC and 720 Princess Street for affordable housing. Cultural services. So cultural services, some of the focus in 2017 will be on the sesquicentennial. So again, this was approved by council, I believe it was back in the summer. This will be actually done in collaboration with a number of city departments and also key stakeholders. Cultural services will also look at expanding the cultural heritage programming at the Heritage Resource Center. So the cultural services has been involved, obviously, in the establishment of the Heritage Resource Center, but they've indicated that they want to see, and they're going to be working on the development of more cultural heritage programming there. Definitely, and this is something that you'll see as well in the Commissioner's office, the importance of cultural tourism and the continued support to cultural tourism. So last meeting, you actually had a presentation from St. Lawrence Parks Commission on Lumina Borealis. So that's one of the initiatives, for example, where cultural services is quite involved in supporting the development and the promotion of some of these major events. Kick and Push Festival is another example. And one that was presented to the Administrative Policies Committee and will be coming to council is the establishment of a film commission. And that will be done obviously in partnership with Tourism Kingston, and I believe that they will be talking to you about that as well tomorrow night. And there is funding being proposed to help with the establishment of a film commission, and that's part, of course, of the larger, bigger plan in terms of cultural tourism. One of the areas, too, where there will be more focus on, and I know it's been in the plans for quite some time, but because of lack of resources, we haven't been able to move as quickly as we would have liked, which is around the public art master plan implementation. And some of the projects included in there that we are looking at implementing and moving forward for 2017 includes Victoria Park as well as Rideau Heights Community Center. So we are in the process of retaining a part-time public art coordinator that will be providing support with this, and that's always been part of the budget, or I should say was part of the 2016 budget and is also in the 2017 budget. So with that resource, we'll be able to get this particular implementation moving hopefully faster than we have been in the past few years. And one of the couple of last things I'd like to mention there, a partnership with the Grand Theatre Foundation. So we have been working, and mostly Colin actually has been working quite closely with the Grand Theatre Foundation to establish a partnership through which they would fund a portion of a position, which would be a fundraising coordinator position, and the city would fund the remaining portion, and that's also with Recreation and Leisure Services. So that will help to do a couple of things. One is that individual will help to do fundraising for the Grand Theatre Foundation, which is beneficial, obviously, to the city as well as the operator of the Grand Theatre. And also that portion of time that is not used on the Grand Theatre Foundation can be used for sponsorship, advertising, and generate non-tax revenues for some of our other facilities, and mainly, I would say, in culture and recreation, of course. So that's why you're seeing this partnership there, and the position is included in the budget and is partially funded by those different departments as well as the Grand Theatre Foundation. And of course, a lot of focus in terms of the using some of the technology and trying to increase the public's participation in the arts, culture, and heritage in the community. Capital budget works in progress. We have quite a lot of funding currently still in cultural services. And a lot of those that you're seeing there are actually envelopes of funding that we will be able to utilize in 2017, like the public art program that I've talked about, the digital strategy, as well as the sesquicentennial. So those are all part of the work that I've mentioned earlier in the when I was talking about the operating budget. 2017 has a fairly small capital budget, and the reason for that is because two things. One, as you can see, there is a lot of money in the works in progress, so there's a lot of work to do, and there's only so much capacity in terms of getting work done. But the 2017 capital budget really focuses on the asset management for Museum, Grand Theatre, and the TET Center. Recreation and Leisure Services, we have a few things that I want to make sure I touch on. Some of them includes, you'll see in your binder, some increased tax contribution to a number of services. Track and field facility is one that's noticeable. POH Marina as well, so Portsmouth Olympic Harbor. The Confederation Basin Marina is not in the same situation financially, and Bell Park, where we've seen a continued increase in terms of tax contribution and quite honestly, a continued decrease in our membership. So in terms of Bell Park, we will be bringing a report to council that will be coming from the Bell Park Working Group. So this is a working group that was established by council, composed of community members. And there are going to be some recommendations in terms of looking at some changes to make Bell Park more sustainable. And that doesn't mean necessarily more golf, because we have been implementing the recommendations of the working group now for 2 to 3 years. And and the results have not necessarily been positive in the sense of increasing revenues or membership. So, and we know we've conducted public surveys. We know that the public is looking at the space for other things, i.e. pickleball. So we've heard a lot of other things that the public would like to see on the property itself. And it's about looking at a balance, and that's what we are going to try to bring back to council. Some of the changes that we've implemented in the past year, and you'll see noted in 2017 as well, are changes in the seasonal operation of Portsmouth Olympic Harbor building. So that's not the marina itself, but the building. So one of the things that we've done starting last year is we've reduced the hours of operation during the winter time, because unless there were rentals, because it was quite honestly not utilized. And through that, we've been able to achieve about $120,000 savings in terms of tax contribution, which is fairly significant, but has not really impacted any services to the community, and that was the key. We will be doing some work in terms of Kingston East Community Center design and programming, and I know we've started and we've been very slow. Councillor Boehm, I know we have been, but we will be ramping it up in 2017 as the construction finally of Rideau Heights Community Center is getting started, and we have a contract that came under budget, so very pleased about that. In Rec and Leisure, we also have the transfer of the contract management for the Rogers K-Rock Center. So that is actually also reflected in the departmental budget. And there are a number, of course, of capital projects that are going to be taking place, many parks, and again, a lot of work in terms of asset management. Capital budget, we do have a lot of money in the works in progress, about $22 million. Most of that is for Rideau Heights Community Center in Shannon Park, so we will be starting to spend that money soon. We still have some funds as well for the K&P Trail, Inner Arbor Trail, which I know all of you have heard about and hopefully seen, and yes, I can guarantee you that we are building a trail. We're not building a road, and that's the exciting thing of getting this project done for July 2017. Victoria Park obviously has started, still work to do. And of course, the Kingston East Community Center is part of our capital budget works in progress. 2017, about $6 million. A lot of work in terms of our sports field, and of course working with Public Works team in a number of parks pathway and again asset management. Long-term care, so Rideau Crest. A lot of great work has been done at Rideau Crest. As you know, we've received quite a complimentary accreditation recently. But we will continue our work in terms of the non-tax revenues from provincial funding. And again, that's about how we document the care for residents, and we need to do that quite accurately and maximize the money that we can get from the province there. We have increased our case mix index budgeted for CMI. Last year was a little bit lower, so that's increased again this year. And this is related to the provincial funding that we receive. So the higher the CMI, the more that we can actually leverage from the province. There's going to be obviously a lot of work that will continue in terms of implementing the recommendations that came through Accreditation Canada, and primarily around involvement of residents and their families in decision-making process within the home. So that's going to be also some of the work that will be done at Rideau Crest. As you are all aware, we have also been making some changes in terms of our progress, I would say, in terms of our collective agreement with ONA. Which will give us more flexibility in terms of scheduling of our part-time staffing, and what we're trying or hoping to achieve is a reduction of overtime at the same time, as we will have more flexibility there with our part-time staff. And we will continue some of the investment in terms of the home as far as equipment is concerned to really focus on improving care. So the overall works in progress, about 1.3 million. We still have some work to do on the terraces. That's being pretty close to completion, if not completed. And replacement of elevators, some bed rail elimination, and that's been actually quite beneficial in terms of care to residents. In 2017, we do have additional upgrades that are being proposed, recommended, primarily resident bedrooms, bathrooms, upgrades, tub room renovations, those kinds of things. And of course, we'll continue to change our furniture along the way as well. We do regular upgrades to that. Commissioner's office, there will be a lot of work to be completed and get started in 2017. So two things, I guess, as a starting point is a completion of the visioning for the Kingston Penitentiary POH property that is scheduled to be completed in the spring of 2017. Also, workforce and migration strategy, again, same thing, late 2017 in terms of completion. There will be some ongoing support in terms of tourism in that, coming from my office in particular. Some of the things that I've been involved with would include public tours at Kingston Penitentiary, and we will be bringing an update to council shortly on this one. We will also, and this will be done with Sheldon's team, of course, in terms of the partnership with United Way for the food security plans. So there are funds in the capital budget for that. And the Sustainable Kingston partnership was transferred to the Commissioner's office, so that's currently under my office. So the funds in terms of ensuring an ongoing partnership with Sustainable Kingston, so we've had an agreement in place, resides with the Commissioner's office, and we will be bringing a report. Actually, I will be bringing a report to council before the end of the year to recommend next steps for next year in terms of our agreement and partnership with Sustainable Kingston. And this is the capital budget, as I said, food security plan, and also we have some funding for youth employment and implementation. Mr. Hunt talked a little bit earlier about how the strategy is done, but the implementation obviously is not complete. We're quite at the beginning of the implementation, and we will be bringing a report back to council in the summer, which will be a year later after the approval, to provide you with an update. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Neal.
Just very quickly, I thank you for the progress that we've made at Victoria Park. It's starting to get almost to the completion point, I think, and I appreciate that. I didn't see in your budgeting either the revitalization of the Memorial Center Park or the park. I always get it wrong. It's First Avenue or Third Avenue Park, Third Avenue Park in Kings Court. That is still within the budgeted schedule, right? I didn't see it pointed out.
Mr. Follow. Through your worship, yes, that's correct. That's still works in progress that will be taking place in the spring at the Memorial Center and Third Avenue Park.
So next year targeted for work on both those projects?
Yes, that's correct. Our plan was to do the work certainly at the Memorial Center at the less busy time, so our goal will be to be in the ground as quickly as possible so that we're not disrupting that site into our high time at Tomlinson Aqua Park in July and August. So, and that same schedule would be applicable to Third Avenue Park as well.
Great, thank you very much. My other question has to do with the planning department. Could we go back to that very first slide on the planning department? I guess I know how ambitious both the comprehensive zoning and the completion of the OP and how busy apparently, especially with upcoming projects in Williamsville, how busy the department is. I'm just curious, I was surprised to see such a small modest increase in operating. And I'm wondering if we've backfilled all of those positions in the planning department so that we'll be able to address those projects as they come forward.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. So on the planning side, we have backfilled all of the technical planning staff positions. We continue to do that as there's been change or people have taken maternity leaves, that type of thing. So we are continuing to do that and have done that throughout the year. Where there has been a change is we had a retirement of one of our clerk secretaries, and we have a very large administrative complement relative to the work that is now, some of it is being done by Dash because we've automated a number of processes. So there was an opportunity to look at the administrative complement and declare a position redundant associated with the administrative work in planning only.
And my final question has to do with the opportunities to collaborate between Public Works and Parks, both in tree plantings, but also in maintenance such as waste management and our future recycling within the parks. Are you comfortable with the progress that's being made there?
Through your worship, yes, we are. We've been working very closely with Mr. Keach and his team, and specifically Heather Roberts. And we're looking also in our recreation facilities where we generate a significantly high amount of waste that could be diverted. And we need some help in implementing a better program and educating our attendees. The challenge we have in our facilities is a lot of the people that come through are visitors as opposed to our parks, who are not, some can be visitors, but majority of them will also be residents. So we're working on that education piece, but certainly we've got a long ways to go in our facilities and our parks.
Thank you. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Councillor Schell.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. It's been great to hear the word tourism mentioned so many times because it has been sort of over past years not nearly so highly thought of. The Penn tour update, my first thought was, is this new information or is it really going to be the expression of what happened during the tours, a report on what has been, or a little bit extra? You don't have to say much.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I will be brief. It will be a bit of both. They'll provide information on the past year, so some of the key information in terms of data, but also will provide council with some information on potential in moving forward.
Thank you. And just one other thing to clarify about, there's a statement on the page, in trying to minimize the impact on tax base and user fees, staff will be reviewing future options of the operations of marinas and Bell Park. But I think what I just heard you say was it probably should have said Portsmouth Olympic Harbor building more than just marinas, or is it marinas are folded into that?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it's actually marinas altogether, because there are some services that are provided at Portsmouth Olympic Harbor that are somewhat connected in terms of storage, for example, that could be beneficial to look at the bigger picture. So we will be taking a look at both. We recognize that we have more flexibility, obviously, with Confederation Basin than we do right now with Portsmouth Olympic Harbor, and the reason for that is because we want to make sure that we go through the visioning exercise before we bring anything, obviously, to council in terms of any changes.
Next on my list is Councillor McLaren.
Just really quickly, has there been any increased revenue from the reorganization of the adult shinny hockey?
Yes, through your worship, yes. And our Facebook group continues to grow. The exact dollar figure, I'll have to get back to you.
Okay. Councillor Stroud.
First, a comment. I'd like to pass on my compliments to the commissioner for achieving only a 1% increase in overall in her department, and also to the director of planning for the same small below target, I guess, percentage increase. And considering how busy you both are, as was already stated, it's shockingly positive to see that in this budget report. I do have one quick question to planning, I guess, about the dash system and heritage. I've been told there's work ongoing in getting the heritage layer into the dash system so that heritage applications will, for example, turn up on the mapping in a different color and that kind of thing. That's part of the work for 2017.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. So that's part of work that is underway right now as part of 2016. Most of the process mapping associated with some of the new work that's going on with the committee is underway right now, and we have training sessions set up, I believe, in 2 weeks from now for most of the committee members to come in and get familiarized with the system. In terms of adding that layer to the planning viewer, that work is undergoing now, and we anticipate that'll be available in early 2017.
Great, good job.
Okay, next on my list is Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments. That is, I'm glad to see that you're working on that food security issue, especially the study you're going to take part and see exactly what's going on there, since that's been ongoing as an issue for years. And also about, I guess you're expanding the shelter for hours, but at least you're over trying to make them all meet up. And I guess that's been quite a challenge as well. So thank you for that. And I look forward to the Bell Park discussion with trepidation. Thank you.
Councillor Osanek.
Thank you. Through you, just one question, and that's the strategy behind moving the budget of the K-Rock Center to recreation and leisure. Is that to try to smooth over, like get better use of the ice time at the K-Rock?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, and this is something that obviously has been in conversation for quite some time between Commissioner Leger and I, that at some point the contract management should probably move into community services. And the reason for that is because of the alignment in terms of the ice booking. So for example, Mr. Falwell's group does ice booking for the K-Rock Center. So there are a number of synergies that are happening there, and it just made sense from an operational perspective to move it over.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I want to thank everyone for their hard work on the KMP Trail and Knott Road. And I had the pleasure to ride my bicycle on the paved portion between River Street and Montreal Street last week a couple times, and it was really great. And everyone who I stopped along there to ask them what they thought, they said, it's really great, and really, they seemed really exciting. I hope all the plantings got in before the snow hit this weekend. My one question, though, is in the planning division, actually, and that's, I've really appreciated all the hard work that's gone into the official plan. We thought we'd be done with it a long time ago, but the diligence and leadership from your department has been really fabulous at responding to new things as they've emerged, new policies and new ideas, and bringing drafts back to the public and back to council. And I really appreciate seeing our team sort of lead that and being part of that. And I'm wondering if the plan, and if we're resourced to see more of our team and our planners taking the lead rather than bringing in consultants from outside to lead plans that affect our community the most.
Thank you, and through your worship, absolutely. That's been a focus of mine since I came in 2 years ago, is to build the resiliency and the capacity of our own set of planners to be doing the work and leading the work of the community that they live in. So we have achieved some success. We have a lot of ways to go in that respect, but you'll see in the capital budget where there is capital allocation, what you'll also see is a portion of salaries devoted to capital, and that's our own staff that are leading and executing the work. In the past, we have had more significant expenditures that have been part of contracting out some of the work, and now we are focusing a lot of that work internally and reducing external expenditures, and you'll continue to see that as time goes forward.
Great. I really appreciate that transition and seeing our city being led by folks who work here and live here and play here. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. And with that, we are at the end of our agenda for day one. So I will ask for a motion to recess, please. Moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bohm. Please vote. And that carries. Thank you.